She was 10 years old when she learned that love gets you killed. 15 years later, Vesper Konstantin stands as the most feared enforcer in the city's underworld, beautiful, brilliant, and utterly empty inside. Raised to be the perfect weapon by the man who found her covered in her parents' blood, she's never questioned her purpose, never felt anything, never wanted anything. Until him. Raffaele Corvino, underboss of a rival family, dangerously intelligent, and the first man to look at her and see a woman instead of a weapon. "You're not a weapon, Vesper," he whispers, his hands gentle on her face. "You're a woman who was turned into one. There's a difference." But in their world, feeling anything is the ultimate weakness. And her boss, the man who raised her, molded her, owns her, has given her an impossible order. Seduce Raffaele, make him fall in love, then destroy him. The plan is simple, the execution is perfect. Until Vesper realizes she's the one falling. "Choose," Raffaele demands, his eyes blazing. "Right now, be his weapon, or be my woman. You can't be both." In a world where loyalty means everything, and betrayal means death, Vesper must make an impossible choice. Obey the only father she's ever known, or fight for the only man who's ever made her feel human. Some weapons are too dangerous to exist. Some loves are too powerful to deny. And some choices will burn everything to the ground. Welcome to the right hand's forbidden heart. Prologue: The Making of a Weapon. 15 years ago. The blood was still warm when Mikhail Konstantin found her. Vesper didn't remember screaming. She didn't remember her mother's last words, or the exact moment her father's eyes went empty. What she remembered was the silence, that terrible, suffocating silence that came after the gunshots stopped, when the only sound in the world was her own ragged breathing and the slow drip, drip, drip of blood onto hardwood floors. She sat in that silence, her small hands pressed against her mother's cooling chest, waiting for someone to tell her what to do. At 10 years old, Vesper Marlowe had been a good girl, an obedient girl. She waited for instructions that would never come. The door opened. Heavy footsteps. Vesper didn't look up. "Stand up, child." The voice was neither kind nor cruel. It simply was, a statement of fact, an expectation of compliance. Something in that voice made Vesper obey when everything else in her wanted to curl up and disappear into the spreading pool of red beneath her. She stood. Her white nightgown was soaked crimson. Her bare feet left small, perfect prints on the floor. The man who stood in the doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes the color of iron. He wore an expensive suit that somehow remained pristine, despite the carnage around them. Those iron eyes studied her with an intensity that should have frightened her, but Vesper had used up all her fear watching her parents die. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. Vesper shook her head. Her throat was raw from screaming she couldn't remember doing. "I am Mikhail Konstantin. Your father worked for me." He stepped closer, expensive leather shoes navigating around the bodies with practiced ease. "He stole from me. This is what happens to thieves." The words should have broken her. Instead, something shifted in Vesper's chest. Not grief, not rage, but something colder. Her father had been weak. Weakness got you killed. "Do you want to die like your parents?" Mikhail asked, crouching before her so their eyes were level. "Weak? Helpless? Begging for mercy that never comes?" "No." The word came out steady, clear. Vesper's hands, still sticky with her mother's blood, clenched into small fists. Something flickered in Mikhail's eyes. Approval, perhaps, or recognition. "Then come with me. I will teach you to be strong. I will teach you to never be helpless again." He extended his hand, large, scarred, steady. "But you must leave this girl behind. The girl who loved her parents, who played with dolls, who dreamed of normal things. That girl died tonight with them. Do you understand?" Vesper looked at her mother's face, peaceful in death in a way it had never been in life. She looked at her father, sprawled across the desk where he'd tried to run, to hide, to do anything except fight. She looked at the life she'd had, small, simple, safe, now painted across the walls in arterial spray. That girl was already dead. Vesper placed her small, blood-stained hand in Mikhail's large one. I understand. 10 years ago, the knife entered the training dummy exactly where a human heart would be. Clean, efficient, lethal. Again, Mikhail said from the shadows. Vesper, now 15 and already tall for her age, retrieved the blade and reset her stance. Sweat plastered her light blonde hair to her skull. Her arms trembled with exhaustion. They'd been training for 6 hours straight without food or water. Her body screamed for rest. She threw the knife. Perfect strike. Again. Retrieve. Reset. Throw. Strike. Again. Her vision blurred. The dummy wavered. Vesper's fingers fumbled the knife, and it clattered to the floor. The sound echoed in the cavernous training room like a gunshot. Mikhail emerged from the shadows. His face showed no anger, no disappointment. That somehow made it worse. "Pick it up." Vesper's leg shook as she bent to retrieve the weapon. When she straightened, Mikhail stood directly before her. "What are you?" he asked. It was a question he'd asked 1,000 times over the past 5 years. "Your weapon," Vesper answered, her voice hoarse. "And what is a weapon?" "A tool, nothing more." "Does a tool feel tired?" "No." "Does a tool feel pain?" "No." "Does a tool feel fear or love or mercy?" "No." Mikhail's hand shot out, gripping her jaw with bruising force. His iron eyes bored into hers, searching for weakness, for the girl who'd cried over her dead parents. She stared back, empty. Vesper had learned early that the fastest way to end the pain was to feel nothing at all. Emotions were indulgences she couldn't afford. "Good," he released her. "Again, 1,000 more throws. If you miss even once, you start over." He left her there, alone with the dummy and the knife and the endless repetition that carved away everything soft, everything human, everything that might make her vulnerable. Vesper threw the knife. Perfect strike. She didn't think about food or water or sleep. She didn't think about the girls her age at the school she no longer attended, gossiping about boys and dances and futures that would never include bodies or blood. She didn't think at all. That's what made her perfect. 5 years ago, the man begging for his life had made 3 mistakes. First, he'd embezzled from the Konstantin family. Second, he'd tried to run. Third, and this was the fatal one, he'd looked at 20-year-old Vesper and assumed that because she was young and beautiful and female, she might show him mercy. "Please," he sobbed, on his knees in the warehouse where all final accounts were settled. "Please, I have children, a wife. I'll pay back every cent, I swear." "You have a daughter," Vesper said, her voice flat as still water. She stood before him in tailored black, her ice-blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, her gray eyes reflecting nothing. 7 years old. Anna. She likes unicorns and wants to be a veterinarian. The man's face went white. You wouldn't." "I know everything about you, Mr. Petrov. Your daughter's school schedule. Your wife's Thursday yoga class. The coffee shop where you meet your mistress every Tuesday at noon." Vesper crouched before him, her movements liquid and precise. "I know that you stole $2.3 million over 18 months. I know that you gambled most of it away. I know that you plan to disappear to Costa Rica next week, leaving your wife and daughter with nothing but your debts." "I'll stay," he gasped. "I won't run. I'll work it off, whatever you want." "What I want," Vesper said softly, "is irrelevant. I don't want anything. I am simply the instrument of consequences." She stood, drew the pistol from her shoulder holster, and shot him once, precisely, through the heart. He crumpled without another sound. Vesper holstered her weapon and turned to find Mikhail watching from the warehouse entrance. She'd known he was there. He always watched her work, evaluating, judging, ensuring his weapon remained sharp. Clean, he said, approaching. Efficient, no hesitation. Thank you. Vesper felt nothing at the praise. Praise was just sound, words without meaning. You've become everything I envisioned. Mikhail placed a hand on her shoulder, the closest he ever came to affection. My right hand, my perfect soldier. I live to serve, Vesper replied. The words were true. Service was purpose, and purpose was all she had. Some of the men question having a woman in your position, Mikhail continued. They see your face and think you're weak, decorative. I know. Let them think it. Their underestimation is another weapon in your arsenal. His grip tightened. But never forget, Vesper, the moment you become like other women, emotional, distracted, compromised by foolish attachments, you become useless to me. Do you understand? I understand. What are you? Your weapon, nothing more. Mikhail smiled. A rare, terrible thing. Perfect. He left her there with the body, and the blood, and the emptiness that had long ago replaced whatever soul she might have once possessed. Vesper pulled out her phone and made the call. The cleaning crew would arrive within the hour. Mr. Petrov would disappear, his body never found, his family left to wonder and grieve and eventually move on. As she waited, Vesper caught her reflection in a darkened window. She studied the face that looked back, beautiful in a cold, untouchable way, like a marble statue or a blade's edge. Men desired her sometimes, feared her often, but no one truly saw her. There was nothing to see. For just a moment, so brief she almost didn't recognize it, something flickered in her chest, not quite emotion, but the ghost of one. The faintest whisper of a question she'd learned long ago not to ask. Is this all there is? Vesper crushed the thought the moment it formed. Questions led to doubt. Doubt led to hesitation. Hesitation led to death. She was Mikhail Konstantin's right hand, his perfect weapon, his masterpiece of controlled violence. She had no past, beyond the night her parents died. She had no future beyond the next assignment. She had no self at all. And that, she'd been taught, was exactly as it should be. Present day. The trader's name was Sergei Volkov, and he'd been selling information to the Italians for 6 months. Vesper had known for 5. She'd let it continue, tracking every exchange, documenting every contact, building an airtight case not just against Sergei but against everyone in his network. When you cut out cancer, you didn't leave any cells behind. Now Sergei knelt in the basement of the Konstantin estate, zip-tied to a chair, bleeding from the beating Mikhail's enforcers had given him. His left eye was swollen shut, several teeth littered the concrete floor. He was crying. Vesper felt nothing. Please, Sergei begged, the words slurred by his ruined mouth. Vesper, we grew up together. We trained together. Don't you remember? I remember that you were always weak, Vesper said. She stood before him in a black suit, tailored precisely to her tall, lean frame. Her pale blonde hair swept back, her gray eyes as empty as winter sky. Weakness makes people desperate. Desperation makes them sloppy. Mikhail doesn't pay enough, Sergei spat blood. We risk our lives every day, and for what? He gets rich while you chose to betray your family. Vesper's voice never rose, never fluctuated. She could have been reading a grocery list. You endangered everyone here for money. Not principle, not ideology, just greed. You're his fucking dog, Sergei snarled, pain making him reckless. His perfect little bitch who does whatever he says. Don't you ever think for yourself? Don't you ever want something that's yours? The questions should have angered her. Instead, they simply were. Words without meaning. No, Vesper said simply. I don't. She drew her pistol, a Sig Sauer P226, custom grip, maintained with the same precision she applied to everything. Sergei's remaining eye went wide. Wait, we can make a deal. I'll tell you everything. Vesper shot him through the head. The sound was thunderous in the enclosed space, then fading, then gone, leaving only the ringing silence and the smell of gunpowder and the newest body at her feet. She holstered her weapon and turned to find Mikhail descending the basement stairs, flanked by two of his senior enforcers. At 55, he remained an imposing figure, his silver hair and iron eyes commanding absolute authority. "Efficient as always," he said, studying Sergei's corpse with clinical detachment. "No hesitation, no mercy." He was a traitor. The sentence was clear. Mikhail approached, his shoes clicking on concrete stained with 15 years of consequences. "I've been thinking about expansion. The Italians are weak right now, fractured. The Corvino family in particular. They're transitioning leadership, vulnerable. I want you to handle the negotiations." Of course. Vesper's mind was already working, cataloging what she knew about the Corvinos, their territories, their weak points. It's what she did. Reduce everything to strategy, to chess moves, to problems to be solved. "The Corvinos will try to intimidate you," Mikhail continued. "They'll see a woman and think we're insulting them. Let them think it, then crush them." "I will." Mikhail studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes I wonder if I made you too perfect," he said quietly. "Too cold. The men fear you, but they don't love you. They follow you, but they don't trust you. Trust is irrelevant. Fear ensures obedience." "True." He turned toward the stairs. "But remember, Vesper, you are my weapon, my right hand. The moment you become anything else, the moment you develop attachments or weaknesses, or desires beyond serving this family, you become a liability, and I don't keep liabilities." "I understand." "Good. The meeting with the Corvinos is Thursday. Don't disappoint me." He left, his enforcers trailing behind. The basement door closed with a heavy thud, locking Vesper alone with the body and the blood and the endless, echoing emptiness. She should feel something, she thought distantly. Satisfaction at a job well done, anticipation for the upcoming negotiation. Something. But there was nothing. Just the hollow space where a human being's emotions should be. Vesper climbed the stairs, her footsteps silent, her breathing controlled. She would go to her apartment, the sterile, modern space Mikhail had provided, devoid of personal touches or warmth. She would shower, washing away the blood spatter. She would eat, because bodies required fuel. She would sleep exactly 6 hours, because that was the optimal amount for peak performance. And tomorrow, she would wake up and be Mikhail Konstantin's perfect weapon all over again. As she reached the top of the stairs, that flicker came again, that whisper of a question she refused to acknowledge. Is this all I am? Is this all I'll ever be? But Vesper had learned long ago that some questions were too dangerous to answer, so she did what she always did. She felt nothing. She thought nothing. She was nothing, except exactly what she'd been made to be. Thursday arrived with rain. Vesper dressed in slate gray, a color that matched her eyes, that suggested steel and stone and immovability. The suit was Armani, tailored to emphasize her height and the lean muscle beneath. Her blonde hair was swept into a flawless chignon. Her makeup was minimal, precise. She looked like what she was: beautiful, dangerous, untouchable. The meeting was scheduled for Neutral Ground, an upscale restaurant the families had used for negotiations before, where the owner knew to clear the private dining room and ask no questions. Mikhail would attend, of course, along with his senior advisors. Vesper would stand at his right hand, silent unless spoken to, a living reminder of his power. As she checked her reflection one final time, adjusting the shoulder holster beneath her jacket, Vesper ran through everything she knew about the Corvino family. The old boss had died 6 months ago, heart attack, though rumors suggested poison. His son had taken over, but the real power lay with the underboss, a man named Raffaele Corvino. Raffaele. Rafe to those who knew him. Former military special forces if the intel was correct. He'd returned to the family business 5 years ago and had quickly become indispensable. The strategist, the problem solver, the one who saw 3 moves ahead. Vesper had studied his file extensively. On paper, he was dangerous. In practice, He would be just another man who underestimated her, who saw her gender before her capability. She would use that, as she used everything. Her phone buzzed. The car was waiting. Vesper took one last look at her reflection, at the weapon Mikhail had forged from a frightened 10-year-old girl, and headed out into the rain. She had no way of knowing that in a few hours she would meet the man who would see past the weapon to the woman beneath. The man who would make her feel for the first time in 15 years. The man who would make her choose between the only life she'd ever known and the terrifying possibility of something more. But that revelation was still hours away. For now, Vesper was simply the right hand, the perfect soldier, the empty vessel of Mikhail Konstantin's will. For now, she was still just a weapon. The question of whether she could ever be anything else remained locked away in the darkness, where she kept all the dangerous thoughts she refused to acknowledge. And in the rain-slicked streets of the city, Raffaele Corvino was preparing for a routine negotiation with a rival family, unaware that his world was about to collide with a woman who'd been taught that feeling anything was the ultimate weakness. Unaware that he would be the one to teach her that feeling everything might be the only way to truly live. The stage was set. The players were moving into position. And somewhere in the space between duty and desire, between loyalty and love, between being a weapon and being human, Vesper Konstantin's carefully constructed world was about to shatter. She just didn't know it yet. Chapter 1. When Predators Collide. The restaurant was called Meridian, and it occupied the top floor of a building in the financial district, where money whispered instead of shouted. Vesper had been here before, twice for negotiations, once to eliminate a problem that had required the kind of discretion only establishments like this could provide. The private dining room overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a landscape of steel and glass and rain. It was nearly midnight, the hour when legitimate business ended and their kind of business began. Mikhail arrived first, as always. Control meant arriving early, claiming the space, making others come to you. Vesper followed 3 steps behind, and 1 to the right, close enough to act, far enough to be dismissed as decorative by those who didn't know better. The room had been set with a long table, chairs positioned for exactly 10 people. Mikhail took the head, naturally. His 3 senior advisors, Dmitri, Alexei, and Victor, arranged themselves to his left. Vesper remained standing at his right shoulder, her hands clasped loosely in front of her, her expression serene and empty. "They're late," Dmitri muttered. He was the oldest of Mikhail's inner circle, traditional, and he'd never quite forgiven Vesper for existing in a role he thought should belong to a man. 6 minutes, Vesper said without consulting a watch. Time was just another thing she tracked automatically, like threats and exits, and the precise distance to every weapon in the room. Mikhail's lips twitched, the closest he came to a smile. "Patience, Dmitri. The Corvinos are testing us, seeing if we'll react to a minor disrespect." "And will we?" Victor asked. He was younger, hungry, always eager to prove himself through violence. "No," Mikhail said simply. "We'll note it, and we'll collect the debt later, with interest." Vesper filed the information away. Everything was currency in their world. Respect, insults, favors, slights. You tracked it all, remembered it all, and spent it strategically. The door opened. The Corvino family entered, and the temperature in the room dropped several degrees as 2 apex predators sized each other up. The new boss, Antonio Corvino, entered first. He was 35, handsome in a classical Italian way, wearing his power like an expensive suit, visible, intentional, slightly ostentatious. He'd inherited his position through blood, rather than earning it through capability, and it showed in the way he walked, the way he smiled, the way he needed to prove himself. Behind him came 3 men Vesper recognized from their files: Luca, the enforcer, Marco, the financial advisor, and... Her gaze stopped. The 4th man was tall, taller than Antonio by several inches, with dark hair that fell slightly too long, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of whiskey in low light. He wore a black suit that was somehow both perfectly tailored and slightly rumpled, as if he'd been doing something more interesting than dressing for a meeting. There was a scar along his jawline, faint but visible, and another that disappeared into his collar. Raffaele Corvino, Rafe. The underboss, the real power. And he was looking directly at her. Not at Mikhail, not at the senior advisors, at her. Vesper's training held. Her expression didn't change. Her posture didn't shift, but something in her chest did. A flutter, a skip, a malfunction in the machinery of her emptiness. She crushed it immediately. "Mikhail," Antonio said, extending his hand with practiced charm, "thank you for agreeing to meet." "Antonio," Mikhail shook his hand briefly. "Please, sit." As the Corvino family arranged themselves across the table, Vesper noted the dynamics. Antonio took the seat directly opposite Mikhail, a challenge, claiming equality. But Rafe sat one seat to Antonio's right, in the position Vesper occupied for Mikhail. The right hand, the real power. Their eyes met across the table, and Vesper felt that flutter again, stronger this time. Rafe's gaze wasn't what she was used to. Men looked at her with lust, fear, or dismissal. Rafe looked at her with curiosity, assessment, recognition, as if he saw something others missed. It was unsettling. "Shall we begin?" Mikhail said. "I understand you have a proposal regarding the territories along the waterfront." Antonio leaned forward, ready to speak, but Rafe's voice cut smoothly across his. "We do. The shipping contracts currently split between our families are inefficient. We're proposing a consolidation. Your family handles the north docks. We take the south. Profits split 60-40 in your favor, given the larger volume." Mikhail's eyes narrowed slightly. Being interrupted was a show of disrespect, but Rafe had done it so smoothly, so logically, that calling it out would seem petty. "Generous," Mikhail said. "Suspiciously so. What's the catch?" "No catch," Rafe replied. His voice was deep, controlled, with the faintest trace of an accent that suggested time spent somewhere other than the city. "Just practical. We're both losing money to inefficiency and the constant territorial disputes. This streamlines operations, reduces conflict, increases profits for both families, and requires us to trust that you won't simply consolidate and then push us out entirely," Dmitri said. Rafe's eyes flicked to Dmitri, then back to Mikhail. "Which is why we're proposing a 5-year contract with penalty clauses. If either family breaches the terms, they forfeit their percentage to the other. Mutually assured destruction, essentially." It was a good proposal. Too good. Vesper's mind worked through the angles, looking for the trap. There had to be something. "I'd like to hear from your advisor's perspective," Rafe said suddenly. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at him. "Excuse me." Mikhail's voice was dangerously soft. Rafe gestured toward Vesper. "Your right hand. I'd like to hear her thoughts on the proposal." The silence deepened, thickened, became almost suffocating. No one addressed Vesper directly in these meetings. She was an ornament, a weapon on display, something to be spoken around or through but never to. Vesper felt every eye in the room on her. Mikhail's calculating, Dmitri's outraged, Antonio's confused, and Rafe's steady and expectant, as if he genuinely wanted her opinion. She should defer to Mikhail. That was protocol. That was her role. But something in Rafe's gaze, that curiosity, that recognition, made her speak. "The proposal is strategically sound," she said, her voice calm and measured. "The profit split favors us appropriately given current volume. The penalty clauses protect both parties. However—" She paused. Rafe leaned forward slightly, genuinely listening. "However," Vesper continued, "consolidation also means reduced redundancy. If one family's operations are compromised by law enforcement, by rival organizations, by internal issues, the other family becomes vulnerable. You're proposing we tie our fates together. That requires a level of trust that doesn't currently exist." Rafe's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Exactly. Which is why we're also proposing a liaison system. Each family assigns someone to coordinate with the other. Regular communication, transparency on operations, early warning of issues. A spy in each other's operations, Dmitri said flatly. A partnership, Rafe corrected, or call it mutually assured transparency. We can't betray you without exposing ourselves, and vice versa. Vesper's mind raced through the implications. It was brilliant, actually, a way to force cooperation through structured vulnerability. But it also meant constant contact, constant exposure, constant... Who would you assign? Mikhail asked, his tone revealing nothing. Rafe didn't hesitate. Me. And you expect me to assign? Your right hand, Rafe said, his eyes on Vesper again. It should be someone with actual authority, someone who understands both the strategic and tactical elements, someone both families will take seriously. The presumption was staggering. Mikhail's jaw tightened, the only outward sign of his anger. He didn't like others making decisions about his assets, and that's what Vesper was. His asset, his weapon, his to deploy as he saw fit. I'll need time to consider, Mikhail said coldly. Of course. Rafe leaned back, apparently unconcerned by the frost in Mikhail's voice. Take a week, but the offer expires after that. The Bratva is also interested in consolidating the waterfront, and they're significantly less diplomatic in their negotiation style. It was a threat wrapped in information wrapped in courtesy. The Bratva, the Russian mob, was expanding aggressively. If the Konstantin and Corvino families didn't unite, they'd be picked off separately. Mikhail stood abruptly. A week. We'll be in touch. The meeting was clearly over. Antonio looked slightly bewildered, as if events had moved faster than he could follow. His advisors rose smoothly, professionally. But Rafe remained seated for a moment longer, his eyes still on Vesper. I look forward to working with you, he said quietly. If your boss agrees, of course. It was the of course that did it. A subtle acknowledgement that Mikhail controlled her, that she had no agency of her own. It should have been respectful. Instead, it felt like a challenge, a question. Does he control you, or do you simply let him think he does? Vesper said nothing, but for the first time in 15 years, she wanted to. The ride back to the Konstantin estate was silent. Mikhail stared out the rain-streaked window, his fingers drumming a slow, deliberate rhythm on his knee. Dmitri and the others sat rigid, waiting for the explosion. It didn't come. That was somehow worse. Finally, as they pulled through the estate gates, Mikhail spoke. What did you think of him? Vesper knew who he meant. Raffaele Corvino is intelligent, strategic, and comfortable with power. He's the real authority in that family, not Antonio. I didn't ask for an analysis. I asked what you thought. It was a trap. Mikhail never asked about thoughts, only facts. Thoughts implied opinions, preferences, the beginning of independent judgment. He's dangerous, Vesper said carefully. Not in the obvious ways. He makes you want to trust him. Mikhail's fingers stopped drumming. And do you? Trust him? I don't trust anyone. Good. The car stopped. Mikhail turned to face her fully. He was testing you, seeing if you're truly what the rumors say, or if you're just decoration I keep around for intimidation. I'm aware. Are you? Mikhail's eyes bored into hers. Because the way you answered him, directly, without deferring to me, that could be interpreted as independence. And independent weapons are called loose cannons, Vesper. Do you know what we do with loose cannons? We eliminate them. Precisely. He opened the car door. You're my right hand, not theirs, not his. If we agree to this proposal, you'll interact with Raffaele Corvino as necessary for business. Nothing more. You will be professional, efficient, and completely loyal to this family. Do you understand? Yes. What are you? Your weapon. Nothing more. Mikhail studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Don't forget it. Dismissed. Vesper exited the car and walked to her private apartment, a guest house on the estate grounds that Mikhail had given her when she turned 18. It was sleek, modern, and utterly impersonal, like a hotel room occupied by someone who never planned to stay. She should eat. She should review the meeting, document everything for the files. She should sleep. Instead, she stood at the window, staring out at the rain, replaying those few moments when Rafe had looked at her. Really looked at her. Not at Mikhail's weapon. Not at the beautiful, dangerous woman who made men uncomfortable. At her, Vesper, as if there was a person beneath the armor worth seeing. It was the most unsettling thing anyone had done to her in 15 years. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You're smarter than he gives you credit for. The profit analysis was wrong, by the way. The split should be 65-35 in your favor. Minimum. But I'm curious if you'll catch it. None far. Vesper stared at the message, her heart doing that flutter thing again. He'd somehow gotten her private number, a number that was supposed to be secure, untraceable. He'd reached out directly, bypassing all protocols, all hierarchies. He'd spoken to her as an equal. She should delete the message, report it to Mikhail. This was exactly the kind of thing that led to compromise, to weakness, to becoming a liability. Instead, she pulled up the proposal documents and ran the numbers again. And there it was, a subtle miscalculation in the volume projections that would shift the profit ratio by nearly 5%. She'd been so focused on looking for major traps that she'd missed the small one. He'd caught it, and he'd told her, giving her the information to look better in front of Mikhail, to prove her worth. Why? Before she could stop herself, before the rational part of her brain could intervene, Vesper typed a response. How did you get this number? The reply came immediately. I'm very good at finding things people try to hide. You should tell your boss about the calculation error. He'll be impressed. Or you could let it slide and see if I'm bluffing. Your choice. Either way, I'm looking forward to our partnership. Sleep well, Vesper. He'd used her name. Not Miss Konstantin. Not her title. Her actual name. Spoken like a secret. Like something intimate. Vesper deleted both messages, scrubbed her phone's history, and forced herself through her evening routine with mechanical precision. But when she finally lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind wouldn't quiet. Raffaele Corvino was dangerous, not because he was violent or unpredictable, but because he made her curious. Curiosity led to questions. Questions led to thinking. Thinking led to feeling. And feeling, Mikhail had taught her, was the beginning of the end. What are you? Your weapon, nothing more. But alone in the dark, with rain drumming against the windows and the ghost of Rafe's gaze lingering in her memory, Vesper allowed herself one forbidden thought. What if I could be more? She crushed the thought immediately, horrified at herself. This was exactly what Mikhail had warned her about. Exactly the kind of weakness that got people killed. Rafe was testing her, playing with her, trying to compromise her loyalty for his family's benefit. That was all this was. Vesper repeated it to herself like a mantra until she finally fell into a restless sleep filled with dreams of whiskey-colored eyes and questions she didn't know how to answer. Tomorrow she would tell Mikhail about the calculation error. She would prove her loyalty, her value, her complete dedication to his interests. Tomorrow she would be the perfect weapon again. But tonight, for just a few hours, she let herself wonder what it might be like to be seen as something more than a tool. And that small, dangerous wonder was the first crack in the armor she'd spent 15 years building. She just didn't know it yet. The next morning, Mikhail's office. You were right, Mikhail said, reviewing the corrected calculations Vesper had presented. The profit split was off. How did you catch it? This was the moment. Tell the truth about Rafe's message, and Mikhail would see it as an attempted compromise. Lie, and she'd be hiding things, which was equally dangerous. Or option 3, a partial truth. I reviewed the documents again last night, Vesper said. Something felt off about the numbers. When I ran them properly, the error became clear. Not a lie, just not the complete truth. Mikhail's eyes narrowed. You have good instincts. That's why you're my right hand. He set down the papers. I've decided to accept the Corvino proposal. With corrections to the profit split, obviously. You'll be the liaison. Vesper's stomach did something complicated. Are you certain that's wise? Dmitri has more experience with... I'm not asking your opinion on my decisions. Mikhail cut her off. This is strategic. The Corvinos expect a liaison with real authority. Sending Dmitri would signal, we're not taking this seriously. Sending you sends a message. We're confident enough to put our most valuable asset in proximity to theirs. I understand. Do you? Mikhail came around the desk, his presence overwhelming. Raffaele Corvino is charming. Intelligent. He'll try to use your gender against you, either by underestimating you or by attempting seduction. Either way, his goal will be to compromise you, to turn you into a source of information or weakness. I won't be compromised. See that you aren't. His hand settled on her shoulder, heavy as always. Because if you are, if I even suspect you've been compromised, I won't hesitate to eliminate the problem. Are we clear? The threat was absolute, unambiguous, crystal clear. Good. Your first coordination meeting with Corvino is Friday, his territory. I'll have Alexei drive you and wait outside. You'll be armed, naturally, but remember, he's not the enemy. Yet. Treat this as a business partnership until he gives you reason to do otherwise. Yes, sir. As Vesper left the office, her mind was already working through scenarios, preparing defenses, anticipating attacks. She had 3 days to fortify herself against whatever strategy Rafe employed. 3 days to ensure that when she saw him again, she would be nothing but the weapon Mikhail had forged. 3 days to forget the way Rafe had looked at her, as if she were a person worth knowing rather than a tool worth using. It should have been easy. Vesper had spent 15 years perfecting the art of feeling nothing. So why did the thought of seeing Rafe again make her feel something she couldn't quite name? And why did that terrify her more than any enemy she'd ever faced? Chapter 2. The Crack in the Ice. Friday, 3:47 p.m. The Corvino territory was different from Mikhail's, where the Konstantin estate spoke of old money and European tradition. Manicured lawns, classical architecture, the weight of history in every stone. The Corvino headquarters was sleek, modern, industrial. A converted warehouse in the meatpacking district, all exposed brick and steel beams and floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the building into a fortress of glass. Vesper studied it from the back of the SUV, cataloging exits, sightlines, vulnerabilities. Alexei sat in the driver's seat, silent and watchful. He was one of Mikhail's most loyal enforcers, built like a tank, and about as conversational. I'll be fine, Vesper said, more to fill the silence than because she needed reassurance. Alexei grunted. Boss says I wait, so I wait. He also said this is a partnership. Standing guard outside sends the wrong message. Boss says I wait, Alexei repeated, as if Mikhail's word was literally the only language he spoke. Vesper didn't argue. She checked her weapon, the Sig Sauer holstered at her ribs, and stepped out into the cool, autumn air. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she approached the entrance, a rhythm that usually centered her, made her feel powerful and in control. Today, it just sounded loud. The door opened before she reached it. A man in his 20s, wearing tactical gear that was just slightly too obvious, nodded respectfully. Miss Konstantin, Mr. Corvino is expecting you. 3rd floor, west side. Vesper stepped inside. The ground floor was clearly operational. Men moving with purpose. Boxes being cataloged. The organized chaos of a smuggling operation running smoothly. No one tried to hide it from her. That was either confidence or a test. Probably both. She took the industrial elevator up, watching the floors slide past through the metal grating. Her reflection stared back from the polished steel doors, severe gray suit, hair in that flawless chignon, expression calm and empty. Your weapon, nothing more. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. The 3rd floor was different from below, less warehouse, more living space. The brick walls were exposed but clean, decorated with art that was actually good, not just expensive. Leather furniture arranged around a fireplace that somehow didn't look ridiculous in a converted warehouse. Bookshelves filled with volumes that appeared actually read, not just displayed. And standing by the window, backlit by the afternoon sun, was Rafe. He'd shed his jacket, his white shirt was rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and scattered with scars. He held a glass of whiskey, and when he turned to face her, that same unsettling curiosity was in his eyes. "Vesper," he said, her name sounding different in his voice. Not clinical, almost warm. "Thank you for coming. Can I offer you a drink?" "No, thank you. I'm here to discuss coordination protocols, not socialize." A smile tugged at his lips. "All business. I respect that. Please, sit." He gestured to the seating area. Vesper chose the chair that gave her the best view of the room and kept her back to a solid wall. Rafe noticed. Of course he noticed. And that smile deepened. "You sit like someone expecting an ambush," he observed, settling onto the sofa across from her. "I am someone expecting an ambush. That's what keeps me alive." "Fair enough." Rafe set down his whiskey. "Though, if I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't do it here, in my own territory, when both our families are watching. That would be spectacularly stupid. Unless you wanted to send a message." "The only message I want to send," Rafe said, his voice dropping slightly, "is that I meant what I said. This partnership can work. But it requires something neither of our families is particularly good at: trust." Vesper met his gaze steadily. "Trust is earned." "Agreed. So let's start earning it." He pulled out a tablet. "All business now. I've drafted a coordination schedule. Weekly meetings, rotating locations, sometimes yours, sometimes mine, sometimes neutral ground. We'll share operational updates, flag potential conflicts before they become problems, coordinate on anything that affects both families." Vesper took the tablet, scanning the document. It was thorough, professional, exactly what she would have drafted herself, which meant either Rafe was genuinely committed to making this work, or he was very good at appearing to be. "This is acceptable," she said, "though I'd recommend we establish secure communication protocols. Our previous messages were—" She stopped, realizing her mistake. Rafe's eyebrow arched. "Our previous messages? I only sent one, and you didn't respond." Damn. She'd essentially admitted she'd read it, considered it, even if she'd deleted her response. "I deleted it immediately," Vesper said, keeping her voice level, "as protocol requires." "But you read it first." "I read all potential threats." "And was it," Rafe leaned forward slightly, "a threat? You tell me. You bypass secure channels to contact me directly. That's either remarkably arrogant or remarkably stupid, or remarkably interested in speaking to you specifically, without our respective bosses monitoring every word." The air between them shifted, charged with something Vesper couldn't quite name. She should shut this down, should establish professional boundaries, should remember that she was Mikhail's weapon, nothing more. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Why? Why? What? Why do you want to speak to me specifically? I'm Mikhail's representative. Anything you say to me, you're saying to him." Rafe was quiet for a moment, studying her with that intensity that made her feel exposed. "Are you, though? Just his representative?" "Yes." "See, I don't think so." He stood, moving to the window. The light caught the scar on his jaw, making it more prominent. "I think you're much more than that. I think you're possibly the smartest person in the Konstantin organization, including Mikhail. I think you see everything, calculate everything, miss nothing. I think you're wasted as someone's attack dog." Vesper felt something hot and dangerous spike in her chest. Anger, maybe, or something worse. "You don't know anything about me," she said, her voice colder than before. "I know you caught the calculation error in less than 12 hours. I know you answered my question at the meeting instead of deferring to Mikhail, even though that clearly wasn't your usual protocol. I know. You know what you've observed. That's not the same as knowing me." Rafe turned from the window. "Then let me know you." "No?" Why not? Because knowing led to connection, connection led to caring, caring led to weakness, weakness led to death. Because we're not friends, Vesper said firmly. We're not allies. We're business associates managing a temporary arrangement, that's all. Is it? Rafe moved closer, not threatening, but definitely invading the careful distance she'd maintained. Because the way you're gripping that tablet, the way your jaw just tightened, the way you won't quite meet my eyes, those aren't the reactions of someone who sees me as just a business associate. Vesper forced herself to look at him directly. You're seeing what you want to see. Maybe. Or maybe I'm seeing what you're trying very hard to hide. The tension was suffocating. Vesper stood, needing to create distance, needing to regain control. This meeting is over. We have our protocols. I'll see you next week. She turned toward the elevator, her heels clicking across the hardwood. Retreat, disguised as departure. Vesper. She stopped. She shouldn't have, but she did. For what it's worth, Rafe said quietly, I don't think you're a weapon. I think you're a woman who was taught she had to be one to survive. There's a difference. The words hit something deep inside her, something she'd buried so far down she'd forgotten it existed. For just a second, her armor cracked, and she felt the full weight of 15 years of emptiness pressing down on her. Then she locked it down, sealed the crack, became ice again. You're wrong, she said without turning around. I am exactly what I was made to be, nothing less, nothing more. She stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed on Rafe's expression, something that looked almost like sadness. Friday, 8:23 p.m. The ambush came on the way back to the estate. Vesper was reviewing the coordination protocols on her phone, Alexei driving in his usual silent fashion, when the black SUV appeared in the rearview mirror. Then another, then a third, boxing them in. Company, Alexei said, his first unprompted words in an hour. Vesper's hand went to her weapon. How many? 3 vehicles, at least 12 men, maybe more. Bratva? Don't know. Too organized for random. The SUVs weren't trying to hide anymore. They accelerated, pulling alongside on both sides. Vesper caught a glimpse of masked faces, raised weapons. They're going to, she started. The first impact came from the right, metal screaming as the vehicle slammed into theirs. Alexei fought the wheel, trying to maintain control, but the second impact from the left sent them spinning. Time slowed. Vesper's training kicked in. Assess, adapt, act. They were forcing the vehicle off the road, into the industrial area where no one would witness what happened next. Standard ambush tactics. Which meant they wanted something. Information, leverage, or her specifically. The SUV jumped the curb, crashed through a chain-link fence, and slammed into a concrete barrier, the airbags deployed with explosive force. Vesper's head snapped back, stars bursting across her vision. Doors opening, footsteps, voices shouting in Russian. Vesper forced her eyes open. Alexei was slumped over the wheel, blood running down his face. Moving, but dazed. No help there. She reached for her weapon, but rough hands grabbed her, hauling her from the wreckage. She counted 6 men surrounding her, 3 more dragging Alexei out. The other SUVs had formed a perimeter, blocking any view from the street. Professional, organized, definitely not random. Vesper Konstantin, one of the masked men, said, his accent thick, "You're coming with us." She could fight. She'd been trained to fight. But 9 against 1 with no backup and her head still ringing from the crash. Those weren't winning odds. So she did something unexpected. She smiled. "If you wanted a meeting, you could have just called." The man who'd spoken tilted his head, confused by her lack of fear. Good. Confusion was almost as useful as fear. "You think this is funny?" he demanded. "I think you're about to make a very serious mistake," Vesper said calmly. "I'm Mikhail Konstantin's right hand. Kidnapping me starts a war you can't win. But if you let me go now, we can pretend this was a misunderstanding. Everyone walks away." we're not afraid of." The gunshot cut him off. Everyone spun toward the sound. One of the perimeter vehicles had a new bullet hole in its windshield. The driver slumped over the wheel. More gunshots. Precise, controlled, each one finding a target. The men around Vesper scattered, reaching for their weapons, but they were in the open, exposed. Professional ambush meet professional counter-ambush. Vesper dropped to the ground as bullets screamed overhead. She rolled under the wrecked SUV, putting metal between herself and the firefight, her mind racing. Who the hell was providing support? Mikhail's men couldn't have responded this fast, unless a figure materialized from the shadows of a nearby building, moving with fluid efficiency. Black tactical gear, no visible face, but the way he moved. The firefight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it ended, 4 of the ambushers were down, the rest retreating to their vehicles and fleeing in a screech of tires and burnt rubber. The figure in tactical gear approached the SUV. Vesper had her weapon out now, trained on him, ready for whatever came next. He pulled off his mask. "Rafe." "What the hell are you doing here?" Vesper demanded, emerging from cover, her weapon still raised. "Saving your life, apparently," Rafe replied, checking Alexei's pulse. "He's alive, concussed, but alive." "I asked you a question." Rafe turned to face her, and for the first time since they'd met, his expression was completely serious. "I had you followed." "You?" Vesper's finger tightened on the trigger. "Why?" "Because I knew something like this would happen. Because someone leaked the details of our partnership, and I knew the Bratva would see it as an opportunity. Because—" He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "Because I couldn't risk something happening to you." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Vesper wasn't ready to examine. "You had no right," she said. "I had every right. We're partners now, remember? Your safety affects my family's interests." "This isn't about your family's interests." "No," Rafe agreed quietly. "It's not." Sirens wailed in the distance. Police, probably. They needed to move. "We need to get you and Alexei out of here," Rafe said. "My vehicle is 2 blocks north. Can you walk?" Vesper's body was cataloging injuries. Bruised ribs from the seatbelt, possibly cracked, whiplash from the impact, various cuts and contusions. Nothing critical. Nothing that would stop her from functioning. "I'm fine." "You're limping." "I said I'm fine." Rafe's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he moved to Alexei, hauling the larger man up with surprising strength. "Then help me with him. We move now, or we explain to the police why there are 4 dead Bratva soldiers in an industrial park." Vesper holstered her weapon and moved to support Alexei's other side. Together, they half-carried, half-dragged him toward Rafe's vehicle, a nondescript sedan that was probably armored and definitely expensive. By the time they'd gotten Alexei into the back seat, the sirens were closer. Rafe slid into the driver's seat, Vesper beside him, and they pulled away just as the first police cruiser rounded the corner. "Where are we going?" Vesper asked. "Safe house, neutral territory. I need to treat your injuries and—" "I don't need treatment." Rafe glanced at her, and Vesper saw her reflection in the rearview mirror, blood running from a cut on her forehead she hadn't even felt. Her blouse torn, revealing bruises already forming. She looked like she'd been in a war. She felt nothing. "You need treatment," Rafe said firmly. "Then we need to talk about who set up that ambush and why." He was right, damn him. Vesper leaned back in the seat, letting her eyes close for just a moment. Her body was starting to register the pain now, adrenaline wearing off, reality setting in. She'd almost died. If Rafe hadn't been there— "Why were you following me?" she asked again, quieter this time. Rafe was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "Because when I look at you, I don't see Mikhail's weapon. I see someone who's been taught that survival means feeling nothing, and He stopped. Started again. I wanted to make sure you survived. That's all." It wasn't all. They both knew it. But Vesper was too tired, too hurt, too shaken to push, so she let it lie, let the lie sit between them like all the other things they weren't saying. The safe house turned out to be an upscale apartment in a building Rafe apparently owned under a shell corporation. He helped Alexei to a bedroom, then turned his attention to Vesper. "Sit," he ordered, gesturing to the kitchen counter. "I can. Sit." The command in his voice made her obey before she could think better of it. Vesper perched on a bar stool while Rafe retrieved a first aid kit, his movements efficient and practiced. "You've done this before," Vesper observed. "Military medic training comes in handy." He dampened a cloth and moved to clean the cut on her forehead. His touch was gentle, impossibly, unexpectedly gentle. Vesper's breath caught. No one touched her gently. Mikhail's touch was possessive, controlling. Her target's touch was violent, desperate. But this might sting, Rafe warned, applying antiseptic. It did. Vesper didn't flinch. "You don't have to do that, you know," Rafe said quietly, working on the cut with steady hands. "Do what?" "Pretend you don't feel pain. I know you do. I can see it in the tightness around your eyes, the way you're holding your ribs. Pain is irrelevant. It doesn't change what needs to be done." Rafe's hand stilled. He was close enough that Vesper could smell his cologne, something woody and clean, and see the flecks of gold in his whiskey-colored eyes. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard," he said. "It's survival. No survival is acknowledging the pain and pushing through anyway. What you're doing is denying your own humanity." His thumb brushed her cheek, so light she almost didn't feel it. "You're allowed to hurt, Vesper. You're allowed to be human." Something in her chest cracked. Not broke, but cracked, like ice under pressure, and she felt warmth seeping through, terrifying, overwhelming warmth. "I don't know how," she whispered, the admission escaping before she could stop it. Rafe's expression softened. "Then let me show you." He should have kissed her then. The moment called for it. The intimacy, the tension, the way they were looking at each other like drowning people spotting land. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped back, giving her space, giving her choice. "You should rest," he said. "I'll call Mikhail, let him know you're safe. We'll figure out the Bratva situation tomorrow." Vesper nodded, not trusting her voice. She slid off the stool, her ribs screaming in protest, and made her way to the bathroom Rafe indicated. Only when the door closed behind her did she let herself feel it. The fear, the pain, the overwhelming confusion of what had just happened. Rafe had saved her, had followed her, protected her, seen her injured, and responded with gentleness instead of dismissal. Had looked at her like she was worth saving. Vesper gripped the edge of the sink, staring at her reflection, blood and bruises and eyes too wide, too vulnerable, too everything she'd been taught never to be. You're allowed to be human. Was she? Could she be? And if she was, if she let herself feel, let herself want, let herself be something other than Mikhail's perfect weapon, what would it cost her? Everything, probably. But as Vesper carefully cleaned her wounds, her hands shaking slightly, she couldn't help but wonder, what if being human, being vulnerable, being something instead of nothing? What if that was worth everything? The thought terrified her more than any ambush ever could. Chapter 3. Forbidden Territory. Saturday, 2:47 a.m. Vesper couldn't sleep. She lay in the safe-house bedroom, staring at the ceiling, her body cataloging every ache and bruise while her mind replayed the ambush on an endless loop. Not the violence, that was familiar, almost comfortable, but after, Rafe's hands, gentle on her skin. His voice, soft and certain, "You're allowed to be human." The words haunted her. Through the thin walls, she could hear movement in the living area. Rafe, apparently also unable to sleep. The clink of glass. Whiskey, probably. Footsteps pacing. Vesper sat up slowly, testing her ribs. Definitely cracked, not broken. She'd had worse, much worse. She should stay in this room. should maintain boundaries, should remember that every moment with Rafe was another step toward compromise, toward weakness, toward becoming exactly the kind of liability Mikhail would eliminate without hesitation. Instead, she found herself standing, padding barefoot to the door. Rafe stood at the window overlooking the city, backlit by the ambient glow of a million lights. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black t-shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, the lean muscle of his frame. The glass of whiskey dangled from his fingers, forgotten. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning around. "How did you know I was here?" "Your reflection in the window. Also, you breathe differently when you're awake versus pretending to sleep." He glanced over his shoulder, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Military training. You learn to catalog sounds, movements, survival skill." "Sounds lonely." "It is." He turned to face her fully. "You should be resting. Those ribs are fine. I've had worse." "I know. I've read your file." Vesper stiffened. "Have you?" 17 confirmed kills. Probably more you haven't been credited for. 3 near-death experiences. The Istanbul job, the incident in Prague, that clusterfuck in Marseille. You've been stabbed twice, shot 4 times, and once you killed a man with nothing but a broken bottle and pure determination. Rafe set down his whiskey. "So yes, you've had worse, but that doesn't mean you have to pretend this doesn't hurt. Why do you care?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. Rafe's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something raw and honest. "I wish I knew," he said quietly. "It would be simpler if I didn't." The admission hung between them, dangerous and electric. Vesper should retreat, should go back to the bedroom, back to safety, back to the ice she'd wrapped around herself for 15 years. Instead, she moved closer. "The ambush," she said. "You said someone leaked our partnership details. Who?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Rafe's jaw tightened. "The Bratva doesn't move without reason. They wanted you specifically. The question is why?" "Leverage against Mikhail, obviously." "Maybe. Or maybe they wanted information. You're his right hand. You know everything about his operations, his weaknesses, his plans." Vesper's mind was already working through the implications. If they wanted information, they would have planned for extraction, interrogation. This felt more like, she trailed off, something clicking into place. "Like what?" Rafe prompted. "Like a message. They didn't plan to take me alive. The setup was all wrong for a kidnapping. Too public, too rushed. They were planning to kill me and leave the body where it would be found." "A warning to Mikhail not to partner with us," Rafe concluded. "The Bratva doesn't want our families united. They want us fractured, fighting each other instead of them. Which means this won't be the last attempt." "No." Rafe moved closer, close enough that Vesper could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Which means we need to figure out who in our organizations is feeding information to the Bratva. Someone close enough to know about our meetings, our schedules. A mole. Or moles, plural. They could have someone in both families." The thought sent cold dread through Vesper's chest. If there was a traitor in Mikhail's organization, someone she worked with daily, someone she trusted. "You don't trust easily," Rafe observed, watching her face, "but you do trust some people. I can see it bothering you, the idea that one of them might be compromised. Trust is a liability. Trust is necessary. We can't function alone, Vesper, not in this world." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered on her cheek. "Even weapons need someone to wield them." "I'm not." Vesper's breath caught as Rafe's thumb traced the line of her jaw. "I'm not a weapon." "No," he agreed softly. "You're not. But you've been told you are for so long, you've started to believe it. You don't know me. Then let me." It was the same thing he'd said earlier. This time, Vesper didn't have the strength to refuse. "Why?" she whispered. "Why does it matter to you?" Rafe was quiet for a long moment, his hand still cradling her face, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. "Because when I look at you," he finally said, I see someone who's been surviving for so long, she's forgotten how to live. And He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I want to show you the difference. That's not why you're here. That's not what this partnership is about. No, it's not. His hand dropped. This partnership is about territories and profits and preventing our families from destroying each other. But that's not why I followed you tonight. That's not why I can't stop thinking about the way you answered my question at the meeting, or the way you caught the calculation error, or the way you're looking at me right now like you want to run, but you can't quite make yourself move. Vesper's heart was pounding against her bruised ribs, painful and exhilarating. This is a mistake. Probably the biggest one I've ever made. Rafe smiled, but there was no humor in it. And I've made some spectacular mistakes. Mikhail will kill me if he finds out. Then we don't let him find out. The words should have shocked her. Instead, they sent a thrill through her body, dark, forbidden, intoxicating. You're asking me to betray him, Vesper said, needing to hear it spoken aloud, needing to understand exactly what line they were approaching. I'm asking you to choose yourself for once, to want something that isn't about duty or obligation or survival. Rafe's voice was low, intense. I'm asking you to be selfish, Vesper, just this once. I don't know how. Then let me teach you. He stepped back, giving her space, giving her choice. The distance should have helped, should have let her think clearly. Instead, it just made her aware of how much she wanted to close it. This is insane, Vesper said. We barely know each other. I know you're brilliant and deadly and completely convinced you're nothing but a tool. I know you take your coffee black. You've read Dostoevsky in the original Russian, and you have a scar on your left shoulder blade from Istanbul that you think no one notices. Rafe's eyes held hers. I know you haven't let yourself want anything in 15 years. And I know that right now, you want this. Want me. Even if it terrifies you. He was right. God help her, he was right. Vesper closed the distance between them in 3 steps. She'd been trained to kill, to hurt, to destroy. She had no practice with gentleness, with wanting, with this. But when she kissed him, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Rafe responded immediately, his arms coming around her, pulling her against his body with a hunger that matched her own. The kiss was nothing like Vesper had imagined, not gentle, not tentative, but fierce and desperate and overwhelming. She felt everything. Every point of contact, every beat of her racing heart, every spark of sensation that traveled through her nervous system like wildfire. It was too much, too intense, too. Rafe broke the kiss, his breathing ragged. Your ribs. I don't care. I do. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch careful despite the desire burning in his eyes. I'm not going to hurt you, Vesper. Not even accidentally. Something in her chest cracked wider. No one had ever cared about hurting her. Pain was just part of the job, something to endure and ignore. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, the vulnerability in her voice foreign and terrifying. Do what? This. Want something. Want someone. She looked up at him, lost and uncertain in a way she hadn't been since she was 10 years old. I don't know the rules. Rafe's smile was soft, genuine. There are no rules, just us, making this up as we go. That sounds like chaos. Terrifying, isn't it? He kissed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. Small, tender touches that made her feel cherished in a way she'd never experienced. We can stop. Right now. Go back to just being business partners. Forget this ever happened. Can we? Vesper asked. Can you forget? No. The admission was raw, honest. But I'll try, if that's what you need. What did she need? Vesper had spent 15 years not needing anything beyond the next mission, the next objective, the next proof of her worth to Mikhail. But now, standing in Rafe's arms, Feeling his heart beat against hers, she realized she needed this, needed him. Needed to know she was more than a weapon, more than a tool, more than the empty thing Mikhail had created. "I don't want to forget," she whispered. "Thank God." Rafe kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. His hands traced patterns on her back, careful of her injuries, worshipping rather than taking. Vesper had been taught to fight, to kill, to destroy with her hands. She didn't know how to touch someone like this. With gentleness, with care, with something that felt dangerously close to affection. But Rafe guided her, patient and unhurried. He showed her where to put her hands, how to angle her head, how to lose herself in sensation, without losing control entirely. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rafe pressed his forehead to hers. "We should stop," he said, though his body was saying the opposite. "You're hurt, and this is complicated. Everything in our world is complicated." "True. But this is complicated, in a way that could get us both killed." "I know. And you want to continue anyway?" Vesper pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Do you? More than I've wanted anything in a very long time." Rafe's hand came up to cup her cheek. "But I need you to understand what you're risking. Mikhail won't just kill you if he finds out. He'll destroy you, everything you are, everything you've built. He'll make an example of you. I know." "And you're willing to risk that? For this? For me?" The question was valid. Vesper had spent 15 years being risk-averse, calculating every move, never doing anything that might jeopardize her position. But when she looked at Rafe, at the way he saw her, really saw her, not the weapon but the woman, she realized some risks were worth taking. "Yes," she said simply. Rafe's kiss was answer enough. Saturday, 6:32 a.m. Vesper woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and Rafe's arm draped across her waist. They'd fallen asleep on the couch, tangled together, after hours of talking and kissing and carefully navigating the space between desire and her injured ribs. Nothing had gone further than kissing. Rafe had been adamant about that, about not rushing, about making sure she was certain. It should have frustrated her. Instead, it made her feel safe, valued, like she was more than a body to be used. Rafe stirred behind her, his breath warm against her neck. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "We fell asleep." Apparently." His arm tightened around her waist. "How are your ribs?" "Painful, but manageable." Liar, but there was affection in his voice. "I'll get you some ice." Before he could move, Vesper turned in his arms to face him. In the morning light, without the armor of her usual suits and severe hair, she felt exposed, vulnerable. "What happens now?" she asked. Rafe was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "Now we figure out who tried to kill you, and we make sure it doesn't happen again. We continue our partnership as planned, public, professional, exactly what both families expect." "And privately?" "Privately," he smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Privately, we see where this goes, carefully, secretly, with full knowledge that we're playing the most dangerous game of our lives." You make it sound so romantic. It is romantic, in a deeply fucked up, potentially fatal sort of way. Rafe's expression turned serious. "But Vesper, you need to understand. I'm not asking you to choose between me and Mikhail. Not yet. I'm just asking for the chance to show you there's more to life than being someone's weapon." That sounds like asking me to choose eventually. Maybe it is, but that's a bridge we'll cross when we get there. He kissed her forehead. "For now, let's just focus on keeping you alive and finding out who's betraying our families." Vesper's phone buzzed from across the room, a harsh intrusion of reality. She untangled herself from Rafe's embrace, immediately missing his warmth, and checked the screen. 7 missed calls from Mikhail, 3 from Dmitri, a dozen text messages, each more urgent than the last. "Shit," she muttered. "Mikhail? He wants me back at the estate immediately." Vesper scanned the messages, her stomach sinking. He knows about the ambush. Alexei must have called him. Then you need to go. Now, before he gets suspicious about where you spent the night. Vesper started to move, but Rafe caught her hand. Be careful, he said quietly. Mikhail's going to be angry, protective. He might do something rash. Like what? Like decide this partnership is too dangerous and pull you from the liaison position. Or worse, decide I'm a threat and end the alliance entirely. Vesper hadn't considered that. If Mikhail pulled her from the partnership, she'd have no legitimate reason to see Rafe. And if the alliance ended, I'll handle it, she said with more confidence than she felt. I know you will. Rafe stood, pulling her against him for one last, lingering kiss. But call me after. Let me know you're okay. That's not professional? No, it's not. Call me anyway. Against every instinct, every rule, every piece of training that told her attachments were weakness, Vesper nodded. I will. Saturday, 8:15 a.m. The ride back to the estate was tense. Alexei, sporting a spectacular black eye and several stitches, drove in grim silence. Vesper had found him conscious and coherent at the safe house, and he'd agreed to say nothing about Rafe's involvement in the rescue. Boss is angry, Alexei finally said as they approached the gates. I assumed. Not just angry, afraid. Vesper looked at him sharply. Mikhail doesn't get afraid. He does about you. You're his. Alexei struggled for the word. His masterpiece. His proof that he can create perfection. Thought of losing you, he shook his head, makes him dangerous. More dangerous than usual? Yes. The gates opened. Vesper steeled herself, locking away everything she'd felt in the past 12 hours. Rafe's touch, his words, the way he'd made her feel human. She became ice again, empty again, the perfect weapon Mikhail expected. But as she walked into the estate, she could feel the cracks in her armor. They were small, barely visible, but they were there. And growing. Mikhail waited in his study, standing by the window in the exact position Rafe had occupied hours earlier. But where Rafe had seemed contemplative, Mikhail seemed volcanic, rage barely contained beneath a veneer of control. Sit, he ordered without turning around. Vesper sat. Tell me what happened. Everything. She did, editing carefully. The ambush, the crash, Alexei's injury. She included Rafe's arrival, but framed it as coincidence. He'd been in the area on business, had heard the gunfire, had assisted. Mikhail listened without interruption. When she finished, the silence stretched painfully. You were careless, he finally said. I was ambushed by 9 armed. You were careless. He turned, and Vesper saw something in his eye she'd never seen before. Not quite fear, but close. You should have anticipated this. Should have had additional security. Should have what? Read minds? I followed every protocol. And you almost died. Mikhail crossed to her, gripping her shoulders hard enough to hurt. Do you understand what that would mean? If you died. The organization would... Fuck the organization. I'm talking about you. My creation. He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. You're mine, Vesper. Mine to protect. Mine to deploy. Mine to... Control? Vesper finished softly. Mikhail's hands tightened. For a moment, she thought he might hit her. Instead, he pulled her against his chest, an embrace that felt more like possession than affection. I raised you, he said into her hair. I made you what you are. I gave you purpose, strength, power, and you repay me by nearly getting yourself killed working with the Corvinos? The partnership was your idea. And I'm beginning to think it was a mistake. He pulled back, holding her at arm's length. This attack proves the Bratva sees our alliance as a threat, which means it's working. But it also means you're a target. I won't lose you to prove a point. So what are you saying? I'm saying the partnership continues, but you're no longer the liaison. Dmitri will take over. The words hit like a physical blow. No more legitimate meetings with Rafe. No more stolen moments. No more. That's a mistake, Vesper said, fighting to keep her voice level. Dmitri doesn't have the strategic mind for this. The Corvinos specifically requested me because Raffaele Corvino wanted to compromise you, Mikhail interrupted. Did you think I didn't notice the way he looked at you at the meeting? The way he addressed you directly, trying to make you feel valued, important? Vesper's blood ran cold. That's ridiculous. Is it? Men like Corvino, they see beautiful women as tools, as leverage. He wants to turn you against me, make you think you're more than my weapon. I am more than. Vesper stopped herself, but it was too late. Mikhail's eyes narrowed. What did you say? Nothing. No, you were going to say something. Say it. The moment hung between them, dangerous and electric. Vesper could feel everything she'd built with Rafe, every small piece of humanity she'd reclaimed, balanced on a knife's edge. I am more than a weapon, she said quietly. I'm your right hand, your advisor. I have value beyond violence. For a long moment, Mikhail just stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Good, he said. That's what I wanted to hear. What? You're developing independent thought, questioning, analyzing, thinking beyond simple orders. He released her shoulders, moving back to his desk. That's what separates you from the other enforcers. You're not just a weapon, you're a weapon that thinks. Relief and confusion warred in Vesper's chest. Then you're not pulling me from the partnership? No, but we're changing the terms. Mikhail pulled out a file. I've done research on Raffaele Corvino. Ex-military, special forces, highly intelligent. He's exactly the kind of man who would see you as a challenge, a puzzle to solve. I don't. Let him try. Mikhail's smile turned cold. Let him think he's getting close, winning you over. Feed him just enough truth to seem real, just enough vulnerability to seem human, and then we'll use that connection to destroy the Corvinos from the inside. Vesper's heart stopped. You want me to seduce him? I want you to make him think he's seducing you. Big difference. Mikhail handed her the file. This is everything we know about his weaknesses, his desires, his psychology. Study it, use it, make him fall for you. And then? And then, when he's compromised, when he trusts you completely, when he's given you access to everything the Corvino family knows, we take it all. Their territories, their operations, their power, and Raffaele Corvino learns what happens when you try to steal what's mine. The plan was brilliant, ruthless, exactly what Vesper would have suggested herself a week ago. But now, with the memory of Rafe's gentle hands and genuine concern still fresh, the idea made her feel sick. What if it doesn't work? She asked. What if he's not interested? He's interested. I saw it. Mikhail's eyes glinted. Men like him, they think they're different, special. They see broken things and want to fix them. You, my dear, are the most beautifully broken thing I've ever created. He won't be able to resist. Vesper clutched the file, her mind racing. This changed everything. If she continued seeing Rafe, she'd be following Mikhail's orders, not betraying him. But she'd also be using Rafe, manipulating him, preparing to destroy him. Unless she warned him, unless they worked together to... No, that was insane. That was betrayal, real betrayal, the kind that would get her killed. But the alternative was using the first person in 15 years who'd made her feel human, using his gentleness, his care, his genuine desire to help her, and twisting it into a weapon against him. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years being a weapon. Now Mikhail wanted her to turn herself into one in an entirely different way. I'll do it, she heard herself say. I know you will. You're my perfect soldier. Mikhail came around the desk, tilting her chin up. But Vesper, and this is important, don't actually fall for him. Don't let his pretty words and gentle touches make you forget what you are, because the moment you become compromised, the moment you choose him over me. He didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. I understand, Vesper said. Good. Now go, rest, heal. And when you see Corvino again, start planting the seeds. Make him think he's winning. Vesper left the study on shaking legs. In her hand, the file felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She'd told Rafe she'd call him, had promised to let him know she was okay. But how could she call him now, knowing what Mikhail wanted her to do? How could she hear his voice, knowing she was supposed to use his feelings against him? In her apartment, Vesper stared at her phone for a long time. Then she made her choice. She called. "Vesper." Rafe's relief was audible. "Are you okay? What did Mikhail say?" "I'm fine. He was angry, but he's keeping me on as liaison." "That's good. I was worried he'd—" Rafe paused. "You sound strange. What's wrong?" "Everything. Nothing. The space between who she was and who she was supposed to be, growing wider by the second." "Just tired," Vesper lied. "The crash, Mikhail's interrogation. It's been a long day." "Get some rest." "But Vesper, about last night, I don't regret it. Any of it." "Neither do I," she said softly, and it was the truest thing she'd said all day. "Good. Then we'll figure this out. Together." Together. The word implied partnership, trust, something beyond the manipulation Mikhail had ordered. Vesper wanted to believe it was possible, but as she hung up and opened Mikhail's file on Rafe, reading through his psychological profile, his weaknesses, his desires, she knew the truth. She was caught between two impossible choices: follow Mikhail's orders and betray the first person who'd seen her as human, or follow her heart and betray the only father she'd ever known. Either way, someone was going to get destroyed. The only question was whether it would be Rafe, Mikhail, or herself. Chapter 4. The Price of Weakness. Monday, 11:47 a.m. The coordination meeting was scheduled for noon at a neutral location, a private room in an upscale hotel neither family controlled. Vesper arrived early, as always, her armor perfectly in place. Slate gray suit, tailored to perfection, hair swept into that severe chignon, makeup minimal and precise. The bruises from the crash were hidden beneath concealer and foundation, invisible to anyone who didn't know to look for them. She was Mikhail's weapon again, empty, controlled, perfect. Except she wasn't empty anymore. That was the problem. Rafe arrived exactly on time, and the moment his eyes met hers across the room, Vesper felt that treacherous warmth bloom in her chest. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, tension in his shoulders, but his smile when he saw her was genuine. "Vesper," he said, professional and distant for the benefit of the hotel staff arranging coffee and water. "Shall we begin?" They sat across from each other at the polished conference table. Rafe slid a folder toward her. Operations updates, territory reports, exactly what they should be discussing. But tucked inside the folder was a note, written in his precise handwriting. "Are you really okay? You sounded off on the phone. If you need to talk, I'm here. Midas R." Vesper's chest tightened. He cared. He genuinely cared, and that made what she had to do so much harder. She pulled out her own folder, sliding it across the table. Inside was her response, written during a sleepless night. "I'm fine. Just processing everything. Can we meet somewhere private after this? We need to talk about the mole situation." It was true. They did need to discuss the traitor feeding information to the Bratva. But that wasn't the only reason Vesper wanted to see him alone. She needed to start the game Mikhail had ordered. Needed to make Rafe think he was winning her over, earning her trust, getting close. Needed to use him. The thought made her feel sick. "The waterfront consolidation is proceeding smoothly," Rafe said. "All business. No territorial disputes so far. The profit split is working as projected." "Good. Any issues with your men accepting the new arrangement?" "Some grumbling, but nothing serious. Yours?" "The same." Vesper paused, then took the plunge. "Though there's been some concern about the ambush. Some of Mikhail's advisors think it proves the partnership is too dangerous." Rafe's expression darkened. "And what do you think?" "I think we can't let the Bratva dictate our strategy. If we back down now, we look weak." "Agreed." His eyes held hers, and Vesper saw the question there. "Are we still okay? Are we still us?" She wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell him that Saturday night had meant something. That she'd spent the past day and a half thinking about his hands on her skin, his voice in her ear, the way he'd looked at her like she was precious. Instead, she said, "We need to find the mole, fast, before there's another attempt. I've been working on that." Rafe pulled out his tablet, angling it so only she could see. "I've compiled a list of everyone in both organizations who knew about your schedule Friday. Cross-referenced with financial records, looking for suspicious deposits or expenditures." Vesper scanned the list. 12 names from Mikhail's organization, 8 from Rafe's. Any one of them could be the traitor. "We need to narrow this down," she said. "I know. Which is why I have a proposal." Rafe leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. "We feed different information to different people. See which false intel makes it to the Bratva." Classic canary trap. It was smart, exactly what Vesper would have suggested. "It's risky," she said. "If the wrong information gets out, it could compromise actual operations." "I know, but I can't think of a better way to identify the leak." His eyes met hers. "Unless you have another idea." Vesper did, actually. "A darker, more brutal approach. Interrogate each suspect individually. Use enhanced techniques. Break them down until someone confessed." It was efficient, thorough, and completely in line with how she'd been trained. But Rafe was looking at her with that quiet confidence, that trust that she'd help him find a better way, a less violent way. "Make him think he's winning you over," Mikhail's voice whispered in her memory. "Feed him just enough vulnerability to seem human." "The canary trap could work," Vesper said slowly, "but we'd need to coordinate carefully. Make sure the false information is believable, but distinct enough that we can track it." Rafe's smile was relieved. "Exactly. I was hoping you'd see it that way." "Why?" "Because some of my advisors suggested a more aggressive approach. Detain all the suspects, interrogate them until someone breaks." He shook his head. "But that would tear both organizations apart, create paranoia and resentment. I'd rather be smart than brutal." The irony was staggering. Rafe was rejecting the exact approach Vesper had been trained to use, choosing strategy over violence, trust over fear. He really was different. And that made manipulating him feel even worse. "When do we start?" Vesper asked. "Tomorrow. I'll prepare the false intel tonight, distribute it to my list. You do the same with yours. We give it 72 hours to percolate, then see what the Bratva knows." "And if it doesn't work?" Rafe's expression hardened. "Then we revisit more aggressive options. But I'd like to try this first." They spent the next hour discussing logistics, coordinating their approach, acting like professional partners working toward a common goal. To any observer, it would have looked perfectly legitimate. But underneath the professional veneer, Vesper was acutely aware of every glance, every accidental brush of fingers when they reached for the same document, every moment when Rafe's eyes lingered on her face like he was trying to memorize it. Finally, the meeting concluded. Rafe gathered his materials, then paused. "The private meeting you mentioned," he said quietly. "My place or neutral ground?" "Neutral, less risky." Vesper wrote an address on a piece of paper, sliding it across the table. 8 p.m. "I'll be there. Monday, 8:03 p.m. The address Vesper had given Rafe was a small art gallery in a neighborhood neither family controlled. It was closed for the evening, but Vesper had acquired the security code through channels she didn't examine too closely. The space was intimate, filled with contemporary paintings and sculptures, soft lighting casting everything in warm tones. It was beautiful, actually, the kind of place Vesper might have enjoyed before she'd been taught that beauty was irrelevant. Rafe arrived 3 minutes late, looking around the gallery with appreciation. Interesting choice. Private, no security cameras. No one will think to look for us here. "And you're sure we're alone?" Vesper had swept the space twice, checking for bugs, cameras, anything that might compromise them. "Positive?" "Good." Rafe moved closer, and Vesper's heart rate kicked up. "Because I've been wanting to do this since the meeting ended." He kissed her, slow and thorough, Like he had all the time in the world. Vesper melted into it, letting herself feel for just a moment before reality reasserted itself. She pulled back. "We can't. Not yet. This is too dangerous." "I know." But Rafe's hands stayed on her waist, his forehead resting against hers. "But God, Vesper, all I could think about today was Saturday night, the way you looked at me, the way you felt in my arms." "Make him fall for you," Mikhail had ordered. "Use his desire against him. This should be easy." Vesper should lean into the attraction, let Rafe think he was winning her over, start building the connection she'd eventually weaponize. But when she looked into his eyes and saw genuine affection there, not lust, not manipulation, but real care, she couldn't do it. Not yet. Not like this. "We need to talk," she said, stepping back to create distance. "About the ambush, about what happens if we're discovered." Rafe's expression sobered. "I know. I've been thinking about it too. If Mikhail finds out about us, about this, he won't just kill me. He'll make an example of me. He'll—" Vesper stopped, the words catching in her throat. "He'll what?" Rafe prompted gently. "He'll destroy everything I am, everything I've built. He raised me to be his perfect weapon, and the moment I'm no longer perfect, no longer useful, I become a liability." The admission came easier than it should have. And Mikhail doesn't keep liabilities. "Then we don't let him find out." Rafe cupped her face in his hands. "We're careful. We're smart. We meet only when it's safe. We communicate through secure channels. We never give him reason to suspect." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's the opposite of simple." His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. "But Vesper, I haven't felt this way about anyone in, maybe ever. And I know it's fast, I know it's dangerous, but I can't just walk away. Can you?" "No, that was the problem. She couldn't." "What do you want from me?" Vesper asked, needing to understand, needing to know if this was real or if she was being played the same way she was supposed to play him. "I want you to let me in, really in, not just physically, but—" Rafe struggled for words. "I want to know the woman beneath the weapon. The person you were before Mikhail shaped you into his right hand. I want to know what you dream about, what you're afraid of, what you want, that has nothing to do with duty or obligation." The questions terrified her. Because Vesper didn't know the answers. She'd been Mikhail's weapon for so long, she'd forgotten there was anything else. Or maybe she'd never known. "I don't know how to be that person," she admitted. "I don't even know if she exists." "She does. I've seen glimpses of her." Rafe's smile was soft. "The way you looked at these paintings when you thought I wasn't watching. The way you hummed under your breath Saturday morning when you thought I was still asleep. The way you're looking at me right now like you want to trust me, but you're terrified of what that means." Vesper's throat tightened. "You see too much. Or you hide too little, at least from me." He stepped back, giving her space. "We don't have to rush this. We can take it slow, figure it out as we go. But Vesper, I need you to be honest with me. Really honest. Can you do that?" This was it, the moment of choice. She could tell him the truth, that Mikhail had ordered her to seduce him, to make him fall for her so they could destroy his family from the inside. That every moment between them was supposed to be calculated, weaponized, fake. Or she could lie. Could pretend this was real, let him fall for her, follow Mikhail's plan while protecting her own heart by remembering it was all strategy. Except it didn't feel like strategy. It felt real. "I'm trying," Vesper said finally, "but you have to understand, I've been taught that honesty is weakness, that showing vulnerability gets you killed. Unlearning 15 years of conditioning, it's not something I can do overnight." "I know, and I'm not asking you to." Rafe moved to one of the paintings, a abstract piece, all bold colors and chaotic lines. "You know what I see when I look at this?" "What?" "Freedom." The artist wasn't trying to create something perfect or controlled. They just felt something and put it on canvas. No strategy, no calculation, just pure emotion. He turned to face her. That's what I want for you. To feel things without calculating the cost. To want things without justifying why. To just be. Vesper stared at the painting, something twisting in her chest. That sounds terrifying. It is, but it's also beautiful. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Finally, Vesper spoke. Mikhail wants me to feed you information. Rafe went very still. What? Not real information. Carefully curated intelligence that makes your family think they're getting an advantage, while actually maneuvering you into position for... She stopped. This was already more than she should say. I'm telling you this because you asked me to be honest. And are you? Rafe's voice was careful, controlled. Feeding me false information? No, everything I've told you has been real. Vesper met his eyes. But Mikhail thinks I'm playing you. He thinks I'm making you fall for me so we can eventually destroy the Corvino family from the inside. The silence that followed was suffocating. And, are you? Rafe asked quietly. Playing me? I don't know. The admission was raw, honest. I was supposed to. That was the plan. But then you? She gestured helplessly. You made it complicated. Complicated how? You made me feel things, want things. You made me question everything I've been taught about who I am and what I'm supposed to be. Vesper's voice cracked slightly. You made me human, Rafe. And I don't know if I can go back to being a weapon after that. Rafe closed the distance between them in 2 strides, pulling her against his chest. Vesper should have resisted, should have maintained distance, but instead she let herself lean into his warmth. You told me the truth, he said into her hair, even though it would have been safer to lie, even though it might make me walk away. Are you? Walking away? No. His arms tightened around her. Because I think you just proved that this isn't strategy for you anymore. Maybe it started that way, maybe Mikhail gave you orders and you tried to follow them. But what you're feeling now, what's happening between us, that's real, isn't it? Vesper pulled back to look at him. How can you be sure? Because if you were really playing me, you would have let me keep believing it was all genuine. You would have used my feelings against me, gotten me to trust you completely, then gutted my family when we were most vulnerable. Rafe's smile was slight, knowing. But you warned me instead. You chose honesty over strategy. That's not something a weapon does. That's something a human being does. He was right. Damn him, he was right. Vesper had just committed treason, had betrayed Mikhail's orders, exposed his strategy, chosen Rafe's trust over her own safety. And the terrifying part was that she didn't regret it. What do we do now? She asked. Now we figure out how to navigate this without getting either of us killed. Rafe's expression turned calculating. You'll keep reporting to Mikhail that the seduction is working. Feed him enough truth mixed with misdirection that he believes you're following orders. Meanwhile, we actually work together, really together, to find the mole and stabilize both families. You want me to lie to him, to betray him. I want you to protect yourself. There's a difference. Rafe cupped her face. Mikhail doesn't own you, Vesper. He raised you, yes. Trained you, yes. But you're not his property. You're your own person, and you deserve the chance to make your own choices. What if I choose wrong? What if this all falls apart and people die because I was selfish? Then we deal with it together. His kiss was soft, reassuring. But Vesper, you've spent 15 years putting everyone else first. Mikhail's goals, the family's needs, the mission objectives. For once, just once, I want you to put yourself first. To choose what you want, not what you think you should want. And what if what I want is impossible? Then we'll figure out how to make it possible. Rafe smiled. I'm very good at solving impossible problems. Vesper wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe they could navigate this deadly game without casualties, without consequences, without someone paying the price for her moment of weakness. But she'd been in this world too long to believe in happy endings. Mikhail is going to ask me about this meeting, she said practically. He'll want details. I need to tell him something. Tell him the truth. We met to discuss the mole situation. We're implementing the canary trap. You're building rapport, making me trust you. Rafe's thumb brushed her lower lip, all of which is technically accurate. And the rest of it? The rest of it is ours. No one else's. The idea of having something that was just theirs, secret, precious, separate from the organizations and obligations and endless calculations, made Vesper's chest ache with longing. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "The most dangerous thing I've ever done," Rafe agreed, "and I've done some spectacularly dangerous things." "Then why risk it?" "Because some things are worth the risk. You're worth the risk." Vesper kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. The fear, the hope, the desperate desire to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have this without it destroying everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rafe rested his forehead against hers. "We should go," he said reluctantly, "separately. Can't risk being seen leaving together." "I know." But neither of them moved. "Vesper," Rafe said quietly, "whatever happens, whatever Mikhail does, whatever the Bratva tries, whatever chaos comes, I'm with you, completely. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Say it. I need to hear you say it." Vesper pulled back to meet his eyes. "I understand. You're with me. And you're with me, right?" It was the question she'd been avoiding, the one that required commitment, choice, betrayal of everything she'd been taught to value. But looking at Rafe, at the genuine care in his expression, at the way he saw her as a person rather than a weapon, Vesper knew there was only one answer she could give. "Yes," she said, "I'm with you." The words felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating and completely irreversible. Rafe's smile was brilliant. "Then we'll figure the rest out together." Monday, 11:34 p.m. Vesper returned to the estate to find Mikhail waiting in her apartment. He sat in her reading chair like he owned it, which technically he did. He owned everything in her life. Or at least he used to. "You're late," he observed. The meeting ran long. Corvino is meticulous about details. And how did it go? This was it, the first real test of her betrayal. Vesper sat on the sofa, projecting calm confidence. "Better than expected. He's attracted to me. That's obvious. And he's starting to open up, share information he shouldn't." "What kind of information?" "Internal family dynamics. His brother Antonio is weak, ineffectual. Rafe essentially runs the organization, but can't officially take control without looking like he's committing a coup." Vesper paused. "He's frustrated by the limitations. I think he's looking for an ally who understands power dynamics." It was true. Rafe had mentioned his brother's inadequacies in passing Saturday night. Vesper had just recontextualized it, made it sound like strategic intelligence rather than pillow talk. Mikhail's eyes gleamed. "Interesting. A power struggle within the Corvino family. That could be useful." "I thought so. If we can position ourselves as supportive of Rafe's ambitions while simultaneously undermining Antonio's authority, we fracture them from the inside." Mikhail stood, moving to the window. "Good. This is good, Vesper. You're doing exactly what I need." The praise should have felt satisfying. Instead, it made her feel hollow. "There's more," Vesper said, committing further to the lie. "Rafe mentioned concerns about loyalty in his organization. He suspects someone might be compromised, but doesn't know who. I suggested we work together to identify the mole. It builds trust while giving us access to his internal security." "Brilliant," Mikhail turned to face her, something like pride in his expression. "You're playing this perfectly. Keep it up. Make him fall for you. Make him trust you completely. And when the time comes, we'll take everything." "How long do you want me to maintain this?" "As long as necessary. Months if needed. The longer the seduction, the deeper the trust, the more devastating the betrayal." He moved closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know it's not easy, pretending to care for someone, but remember, it's all strategy. None of it is real." Vesper met his eyes, her expression carefully neutral. "Of course, I understand." "Do you?" "Because Corvino is handsome, charming, intelligent. The kind of man who could make a woman forget herself if she wasn't careful. I'm always careful. See that you are. His grip tightened slightly. Because the moment you actually develop feelings for him, the moment this becomes real instead of strategy, you become compromised. And you know what happens to compromised assets. They're eliminated. Exactly. Mikhail released her shoulder. Now get some rest. You have the canary trap to implement tomorrow. Make sure you're coordinating with Corvino. It's a perfect excuse for additional contact. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Alone, Vesper let out a shaking breath. She'd done it, had lied to Mikhail's face, betrayed his trust, chosen Rafe over the only father she'd ever known. And the terrifying part was how easy it had been. Vesper pulled out her phone, staring at Rafe's number. She shouldn't call. It was late, risky, unnecessary. But she needed to hear his voice, needed the reminder that she wasn't alone in this impossible situation. She called. Vesper. Rafe's voice was warm, concerned. Everything okay? I talked to Mikhail. He believes the cover story. Good, that's good. A pause. How are you feeling about all this? How is she feeling? Terrified, exhilarated, like she was betraying everything she'd ever been while simultaneously becoming something more. Complicated, she said finally. That's honest, at least. She could hear the smile in his voice. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start the canary trap, and we need to be sharp. Rafe? Yeah? Thank you for seeing me. The real me, not just the weapon. Always, he said softly. Sleep well, Vesper. The call ended. Vesper sat in the darkness of her apartment, staring at nothing, feeling everything. She'd crossed a line tonight, had chosen desire over duty, emotion over emptiness, Rafe over Mikhail. There was no going back. And as she finally climbed into bed, exhausted and overwhelmed, Vesper realized she didn't want to go back. For the first time in 15 years, she wanted to move forward. Even if it killed her. Especially if it meant she'd die as a human being instead of a weapon. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like freedom. Chapter 5. The Impossible Choice. Wednesday, 2:17 p.m. The canary trap was working. Vesper sat in Mikhail's study, reviewing the intelligence reports with growing certainty. 3 pieces of false information had been leaked, each slightly different, each fed to a different suspect. And 48 hours later, the Bratva had made moves based on information that could have only come from one source. Victor, Mikhail's own enforcer, a man who'd been with the organization for 8 years, who'd proven himself loyal through countless operations, who Vesper had trusted to watch her back. You're certain? Mikhail asked, his voice dangerously calm. The Bratva repositioned assets to intercept a shipment that doesn't exist, the exact fake intel we fed to Victor. Vesper slid the report across the desk. Rafe's canary trap caught someone on his end too. Marco, one of Antonio's financial advisors. 2 moles, 1 in each family. Mikhail's fingers drummed against his desk. Which means this wasn't opportunistic. The Bratva has been planning this infiltration for months, maybe years. It also means there could be more we haven't found yet. Agreed. Mikhail stood, moving to the window. We need to handle this carefully. If we move too quickly, we risk alerting other potential moles. But if we wait too long, they could do more damage. Vesper finished. Exactly. He turned to face her. I want you to coordinate with Corvino. Decide how to eliminate both traitors simultaneously. Send a message that betrayal has consequences. Eliminate. Not arrest, not question, not even interrogate extensively. Just eliminate. A week ago, Vesper wouldn't have hesitated. Victor's betrayal would have been met with swift, brutal justice. It was how their world worked. But now, with Rafe's voice in her head talking about being smart instead of brutal, about trust instead of fear, Vesper found herself hesitating. What if we questioned them first, she heard herself say, found out how deep the Bratva infiltration goes, who else might be compromised? Mikhail's eyes narrowed. Questioning takes time we may not have. But if we eliminate them without extracting information, we're operating blind. There could be a dozen more moles we don't know about. An excellent point. Mikhail studied her intently. Is this your idea or Corvino's? The question was a trap. Vesper could feel it. Mine, she said carefully, though I imagine Rafe will agree when I present it to him. He is strategic. He'll see the value in intelligence gathering. Rafe. Mikhail's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're on a first-name basis now. It's easier than constantly saying Corvino or the underboss. We're working together daily. Some familiarity is inevitable. Indeed, Mikhail moved closer, his presence overwhelming. And how is the seduction progressing? Is he falling for you? Vesper had prepared for this question, had rehearsed her answer. But looking into Mikhail's calculating eyes, she realized he was testing her, watching for any sign that she was the one falling. He's interested, she said, keeping her voice level. He seeks out my opinion, values my input. He's starting to share information he shouldn't, like his frustrations with Antonio's leadership, tensions within his organization. But is he emotionally compromised? Not yet. He's too smart to fall quickly, but I'm making progress. Show me. Vesper blinked. What? Show me how you're playing him. Call him now. Let me listen. Her heart rate spiked, but she kept her expression neutral. Is that wise? If he suspects I'm performing for an audience, then perform well enough that he doesn't suspect. Mikhail's voice was steel. Call him, Vesper, now. There was no refusing. Vesper pulled out her phone, acutely aware of Mikhail's eyes on her, and dialed Rafe's number. He answered on the second ring. Vesper, I was just about to call you. The canary trap results came through. I know. I'm looking at them now. She injected warmth into her voice, the kind of warmth that suggested intimacy, connection. Your plan worked perfectly. Our plan, Rafe corrected. You refined the approach, made it airtight. This was a team effort. Mikhail was watching her like a hawk. Vesper needed to give him what he wanted, proof that she was manipulating Rafe, using his attraction against him. I was thinking, she said, softening her voice further, we should meet to discuss next steps, somewhere private, just the two of us. A pause. Rafe knew she was with Mikhail. She texted him earlier that she'd be in the study all afternoon, which meant this performance was for someone's benefit. I'd like that, he said carefully. When and where? Tonight, 8 p.m. The gallery again? Perfect. I'll bring dinner. You barely ate at our last meeting. The casual intimacy of the statement, the implication that Rafe had noticed what she ate, that he cared enough to bring food, would read as exactly what Mikhail wanted to see. Evidence of a man falling for his target. You don't have to do that, Vesper said. I want to. Rafe's voice dropped slightly. I'll see you tonight. The call ended. Mikhail's expression was unreadable. Well played, he said finally. The way you softened your voice suggested intimacy without being overt. And his response, bringing you dinner, noticing your eating habits, he's definitely interested. I told you he was. Interest isn't the same as emotional compromise. I need him vulnerable, Vesper. I need him so far gone that when we make our move, he doesn't see it coming. That takes time. Then take it, but don't lose sight of the end goal. Mikhail gripped her shoulder. Corvino is a means to an end, a tool, just like you. When he's served his purpose, we'll discard him. Don't make the mistake of thinking he's anything more than that. The words were meant to be reassuring, perhaps. A reminder of the plan, the strategy, the endgame. Instead, they made Vesper feel sick. Because Rafe wasn't a tool. He was a man who'd risked himself to save her, who looked at her like she was worth knowing, who made her feel human for the first time in 15 years. And she was supposed to destroy him. I understand, Vesper said, because it was the only safe response. Good, now go, prepare for tonight's meeting. And Vesper? Yes? Make him fall in love with you, really truly in love, because when we take everything from him, I want it to hurt. I want him to know that his biggest weakness was seeing you as anything other than what you really are. And what am I? Vesper asked, needing to hear it. Mine, Mikhail said simply. My weapon, my creation, my perfect instrument of destruction. Wednesday, 7:43 p.m. Vesper arrived at the gallery early, using the time to sweep for bugs and compose herself. The conversation with Mikhail had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Make him fall in love with you. Make it hurt. The orders were clear, brutal. Exactly what she should have expected from Mikhail. But the thought of hurting Rafe deliberately, of using his feelings as a weapon against him, made something in her chest rebel. Her phone buzzed. A message from Rafe. Running 5 minutes late. Traffic nightmare. Don't start without me. Winking face. The winky face was so unexpected, so normal, that Vesper almost smiled despite herself. Rafe had a way of doing that, making her feel like a regular person, having a regular conversation, instead of a weapon reporting to her handler. She texted back, "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." It was true in more ways than one. She wasn't going anywhere, because this thing with Rafe, whatever it was, had already rooted itself too deep to extract, without causing catastrophic damage. Rafe arrived 6 minutes late, carrying bags from an Italian restaurant Vesper recognized as expensive and exclusive. His hair was slightly disheveled from the wind, his tie loosened, and when he smiled at her it was genuine and warm and completely undoing. "Sorry I'm late. The city is a disaster tonight." He set the bags on a nearby table, then turned to face her fully. "Are you okay? You sounded strange on the phone earlier." Mikhail was listening. Understanding flickered in Rafe's eyes. Hence the performance. "I'm sorry. I should have warned you." "Don't apologize." Rafe moved closer, his hands settling on her waist. "You did what you had to do, I understand." "Do you? Because sometimes I'm not sure I understand anymore." Vesper looked up at him, feeling lost and uncertain. "Mikhail wants me to make you fall in love with me. And then when you're completely vulnerable, completely trusting, he wants me to destroy you." Rafe was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "What's funny?" Vesper demanded. "It's not funny. It's just, Vesper, do you really think you need to make me fall for you? Like it's something you have to work at?" Her breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm already there. Have been since that first meeting when you answered my question instead of deferring to Mikhail. When you looked at me like I'd asked something genuinely interesting instead of something threatening." His hands cupped her face. "You can't make me fall in love with you because I already have." The world tilted. Vesper grabbed his wrists, needing to steady herself. "That's impossible. We barely know each other. I know you're brilliant and deadly and completely convinced you're nothing but a weapon. I know you take your coffee black, you've read Dostoevsky in the original Russian, and you unconsciously hum when you're concentrating." Rafe's thumb brushed her cheek. "I know you've been taught that feeling anything is weakness, but you feel everything so deeply it scares you. I know you want to trust me, but you're terrified of what that means." "Stop," Vesper whispered. "You can't. We can't." "Why not?" "Because this ends badly. Mikhail will find out, and he'll kill me. Or I'll betray you like he wants, and you'll hate me. Either way, someone gets destroyed." "Or," Rafe said quietly, "we find a third option, one where we both survive." "There is no third option. There's always a third option. We just have to be smart enough to find it." Vesper pulled away from him, needing distance, needing to think. "You're talking about betraying both our families. Going against everything we've built, everyone we've sworn loyalty to. I'm talking about choosing ourselves instead of letting our families choose for us." Rafe didn't follow her, giving her space. "Vesper, what do you want? Not what Mikhail wants, not what the organization needs. What do you want?" The question was impossible. Vesper had spent 15 years not wanting anything, not allowing herself desires beyond the next mission, the next proof of her worth. But standing in this gallery, looking at Rafe with his patient eyes and gentle hands and absolute certainty that she was worth fighting for, Vesper knew the answer. "I want this," she whispered. "I want you. I want to be the person you see when you look at me. someone human and whole instead of broken and empty. I want... Her voice cracked. Rafe crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, pulling her against his chest. Then take it, he murmured into her hair. Take what you want, Vesper. Stop letting Mikhail decide who you are and what you deserve. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. And that complicated. Rafe pulled back to look at her. But we can figure it out, together. How? Mikhail owns me. He raised me, trained me, made me everything I am. He made you a weapon. But you were a person first, before he got his hands on you. That person is still in there, Vesper. I've seen her, and she's not his to control. Vesper wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that she could be more than Mikhail's creation, more than the perfect instrument of destruction he'd forged from a traumatized child. But 15 years of conditioning was hard to overcome. Even if I wanted to leave, wanted to choose you over him, he'd never let me go, she said. Mikhail doesn't lose, and he definitely doesn't lose his weapons. Then we don't ask permission. We take what we want and deal with the consequences. The consequences could be death, for both of us. I know, Rafe's smile was slight, reckless, but some things are worth dying for. You're worth dying for. The declaration should have frightened her. Instead, it made something warm bloom in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. You're insane, Vesper said. Probably. But I'm also in love with you, and I'm not walking away from that just because it's dangerous. Love, Vesper repeated, testing the word. You love me. Yes. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and brilliant and desperately lonely. I know you've been surviving so long you've forgotten how to live. I know you want something more, but you're terrified to reach for it. Rafe's hands settled on her waist. And I know that when you look at me, you see someone who might give you that something more. Am I wrong? No, Vesper admitted. You're not wrong. Then let me give it to you. Let me show you what life could be like if you weren't constantly fighting to prove your worth to someone who'll never value you the way you deserve. The offer was tempting, too tempting. And what about our families, the territories, the businesses, the partnership? We can't just abandon all of that. We don't have to. Rafe's expression turned calculating. We're both smart enough to navigate this. We maintain the partnership publicly, keep feeding Mikhail enough information to think you're following his plan. Meanwhile, we work together to stabilize both organizations, root out any remaining Bratva infiltration, and position ourselves to eventually take control. Take control, Vesper echoed. You want to stage a coup? I want to build something better than what we have. An organization that doesn't require its members to be emotionless weapons. That doesn't trade in fear and brutality. His eyes held hers. Don't you want that too? She did. God help her, she did. But the thought of betraying Mikhail, of taking everything he'd built and reshaping it into something he'd never approve of. He raised me, Vesper said quietly. Saved me when I had nothing. Gave me purpose, strength, a place to belong. How can I betray that? He didn't save you. He used you. Rafe's voice was gentle but firm. He took a traumatized child and turned her into a weapon instead of helping her heal. That's not love, Vesper. That's exploitation. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. Vesper had always known, on some level, that Mikhail's care was conditional, strategic, that she was valuable to him only insofar as she was useful. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way she couldn't ignore. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. You can. I'll help you. Rafe pulled her close. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you want to keep playing Mikhail's game, we'll play it together. If you want to run, we'll run together. If you want to fight, we'll fight together. Just don't ask me to walk away from you. Because I won't, I can't. Vesper buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. For 15 years she'd been alone, self-sufficient, needing no one. But right now, she needed Rafe more than she'd ever needed anything. "What do we do about Victor and Marco?" she asked, the practical question grounding her. "We interrogate them, carefully, thoroughly. Find out everything they know about the Bratva's plans." Rafe's hand stroked her hair. "And then we eliminate them, because traitors can't be allowed to live in our world. But we do it smart. We extract every piece of information first. Mikhail wants them dead immediately. Then we convince him that my approach yields better results. Frame it as strategy, not mercy." Rafe pulled back to look at her. "Can you do that?" "I think so." Vesper's mind was already working through the approach, the arguments she'd need to make. He values intelligence. If I position it as extracting maximum value from the traitors before disposal, then he'll agree, because it serves his interests. Rafe smiled. "See? We're already thinking like a team. A team. Partners. Something more than just weapon and wielder, tool and user." The idea was intoxicating. "When do we start?" Vesper asked. "Tomorrow. We'll coordinate the interrogations, share what we learn, present a unified front to both families." His hand cupped her cheek. "But tonight, let's just be us. No strategy, no manipulation, no thinking 3 moves ahead. Just 2 people who care about each other having dinner in a beautiful gallery." It sounded simple, normal. The kind of thing regular people did without calculating every risk and consequence. "I don't know how to do that," Vesper admitted. "Then let me teach you." Rafe led her to where he'd set up dinner. White tablecloths spread on the gallery floor, candles providing soft light, food arranged with care. It was absurdly romantic, completely impractical, and utterly perfect. They ate slowly, talking about nothing important. Rafe told her about growing up in a military family, the constant moving, the pressure to excel. Vesper shared fragments of her childhood before Mikhail, her mother's laugh, her father's terrible jokes, small moments of normalcy she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten they existed. And for a few hours Vesper let herself be human, let herself want, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have this without it destroying everything. But as the evening wound down, reality reasserted itself. They had interrogations to coordinate, traitors to eliminate, families to deceive. The world outside this gallery didn't care about their feelings or their impossible dreams. "I should go," Vesper said reluctantly. "Mikhail will want a report on tonight's meeting." "What will you tell him? That you're falling for me? That I'm making progress? That everything is going according to plan?" She looked up at Rafe. "Is that okay? Can you live with me telling him that while knowing the truth is different?" "I can live with whatever keeps you safe," Rafe said. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me you won't lose yourself in the role. That no matter what you have to say to Mikhail, no matter what you have to pretend, you'll remember this. Remember us. Remember that you're more than his weapon." Vesper kissed him, slow and deep, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. "I promise," she whispered against his lips. It was the most honest thing she'd said in 15 years. And the most dangerous. Because keeping that promise meant choosing Rafe over Mikhail, desire over duty, love over loyalty. It meant betraying the only father she'd ever known. And in their world, betrayal had only one consequence. But as Vesper left the gallery and drove back to the estate, her lips still tingling from Rafe's kiss and her heart fuller than it had ever been, she realized she'd already made her choice. She just had to figure out how to survive it. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. Thursday, 9:23 a.m. Victor's interrogation took place in the basement of the Konstantin estate, the same room where Vesper had executed Sergei weeks ago. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. Victor sat zip-tied to a chair, his face already showing signs of the preliminary questioning Dmitri had conducted. One eye was swollen shut, his lips split, blood crusting on his collar. When Vesper entered, he looked up with something between defiance and desperation. "Vesper," he rasped, "please, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think." She pulled up a chair, sitting across from him with clinical detachment. "You've been feeding information to the Bratva for months. The canary trap proved it conclusively. "They have my sister," Victor blurted out. "Katya. They took her 6 months ago. Said they'd kill her if I didn't cooperate. I had no choice." "You always have a choice." Vesper's voice was flat. "You could have come to Mikhail, asked for help extracting your sister. Instead, you betrayed your family and put all of us at risk. Mikhail would have killed me for being compromised. You know he would have." Unfortunately, Victor was probably right. Mikhail didn't tolerate weakness, and having a kidnapped sister definitely qualified. But Vesper couldn't afford sympathy. Not here. Not with Dmitri and Alexei watching from the doorway, evaluating her performance. "Tell me everything," she said. "Who's your contact? What information have you provided? What are the Bratva planning?" Victor talked. For 3 hours he talked, spilling details about dead drops and encrypted communications and the Bratva's larger strategy. They weren't just targeting the Konstantin-Corvino alliance. They were planning a full-scale takeover of the city's entire underworld. And they had more moles. At least 4 others in various organizations, including one highly placed in city government. Vesper documented everything, her mind cataloging the information even as her heart ached for Victor's situation. He'd been trapped, coerced, forced to choose between his sister and his loyalty. She understood that better than she wanted to admit. "What happens to Katya if I die?" Victor asked quietly. "That's not my concern." "Please, Vesper, we trained together. You know I'm not a traitor by choice. Help me. Help her. Get her out before you kill me." Vesper stood, turning toward the door. "That's not how this works. You're Mikhail's favorite, his right hand. If you asked him to extract Katya first, he'd listen to you." "No, he wouldn't." "He might, for you." Victor's remaining eye was desperate. "I know you're not as cold as you pretend. I've seen you when you think no one's watching. There's humanity in you still. Please." The words hit too close to home. Vesper paused at the door. "I'll see what I can do," she said quietly. "No promises." She left before Victor could respond, before Dmitri could comment on her moment of weakness. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. "Rafe. Marco's interrogation is complete. Similar story. Family being held hostage. The Bratva is using leverage against anyone with vulnerabilities. We need to talk. Secure line in 10 minutes?" Vesper texted back confirmation and made her way to her apartment. She'd installed additional encryption on her phone, creating a secure channel that even Mikhail's surveillance couldn't penetrate. Probably. The call connected exactly 10 minutes later. "Victor has a sister," Vesper said without preamble. "Katya. The Bratva kidnapped her 6 months ago, used her as leverage to force his cooperation." "Marco has a son," Rafe replied, 7 years old. "They took him from school, sent Marco photos of the boy tied up. He had no choice." "There's always a choice." "Is there?" Rafe's voice was thoughtful. "If someone took someone you loved, held them hostage, threatened to kill them unless you cooperated, what would you do?" Vesper thought about it. A week ago, her answer would have been simple. She didn't love anyone, so the scenario was impossible. But now, "I don't know," she admitted. "Neither did they. They made the choice they could live with." Rafe paused. "The question is, what do we do about it? Mikhail wants them executed immediately. Public executions, probably, to send a message. Antonio wants the same for Marco. But Vesper, these aren't willing traitors. They're victims being used as weapons against us. That doesn't change the fact that they betrayed their families." "No, but it does change how we should respond." Rafe's voice was careful. "What if we extract the hostages first? Katya and Marco's son. Free them, then deal with the traitors. And let Victor and Marco live." "I didn't say that. But we don't have to kill them immediately. We could use them, feed false information back to the Bratva through their established channels, make the Bratva think they still have moles in place." It was clever. Strategically sound. The kind of thinking that valued intelligence over brutality. The kind of thinking Mikhail would never approve. "I'll have to convince Mikhail," Vesper said, "and he's not going to like it." "Can you do it?" "I don't know. He's already suspicious of how much influence you have over my thinking." Then frame it as your idea, your strategy. I'll do the same with Antonio. Rafe was quiet for a moment. Vesper, this is important. If we can save these hostages, show our people that we protect them even when they're compromised. It changes the dynamic. Fear isn't the only way to ensure loyalty. He was right. But implementing this would require going against Mikhail's direct orders, prioritizing mercy over message sending. It would be another betrayal. I'll try, Vesper said finally. But I need you to understand, if Mikhail refuses, if he insists on immediate execution, I can't override him. Not without exposing myself. I know. Just do your best, that's all I'm asking. After the call ended, Vesper sat in silence, staring at the recording of Victor's interrogation. His desperate plea echoed in her mind. There's humanity in you still. Was there? Or had 15 years of Mikhail's conditioning hollowed her out so completely that any remaining humanity was just an illusion, a trick of her desire to be more than she was? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mikhail entered without waiting for permission, because this was his estate, his apartment, his weapon. She belonged to him. Victor's interrogation was productive, he said, settling into her reading chair like he owned it. Dmitri said you extracted valuable intelligence about the Bratva's network. 4 additional moles, 1 in city government. The Bratva is planning a full takeover. They want to consolidate all criminal operations under their control. Ambitious. Mikhail's expression was thoughtful. Which means we need to move quickly. Eliminate the known traitors. Root out the unknown ones. Strike the Bratva before they're ready. This was it. The moment to either follow his lead or push for a different approach. Victor's sister is being held hostage, Vesper said carefully. That's why he cooperated. The Bratva is using family members as leverage. And if we extract the hostages first, we can flip the traitors back to our side. Use them to feed false information to the Bratva. Mikhail's eyes narrowed. Is this Corvino's idea? It's mine, though I imagine Rafe will agree when I present it. Rafe. Mikhail stood, moving closer. You're very familiar with him now. Should I be concerned? Vesper's heart rate kicked up, but she kept her expression neutral. You told me to make him fall for me. That requires a certain level of familiarity. There's a difference between strategic intimacy and actual attachment. His hand settled on her shoulder, gripped just slightly too tight. Tell me honestly, Vesper, are you developing feelings for Raffaele Corvino? The question was a trap. Answer yes, and she'd admit to being compromised. Answer no, and Mikhail might decide the seduction wasn't working, might pull her from the partnership entirely. I'm doing exactly what you ordered, Vesper said, meeting his eyes, making him trust me, making him care. If that requires me to mimic feelings I don't have, then that's what I'm doing. Mimic, Mikhail repeated. Not feel. Not feel, Vesper confirmed, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. Mikhail studied her for a long moment. Then, apparently satisfied, he released her shoulder. Good, because I'd hate to think you'd forgotten your purpose. He moved toward the door. The answer is no, by the way. We're not extracting hostages. We're executing traitors. Tonight. Both of them, simultaneously, at a neutral location where both families can witness. Message sending, not mercy. But the intelligence we could gather can be gathered through other means. Mikhail turned back. Victor and Marco made their choices. Now they face the consequences. You'll handle Victor's execution personally. Consider it a reminder of what happens to those who betray their family. The order was clear. Absolute. Yes, sir, Vesper said. Mikhail left. Alone, Vesper pulled out her phone with shaking hands and texted Rafe. He said no execution tonight. Both of them. I tried. The response came quickly. I know you did. Antonio said the same. We follow orders for now. But Vesper, this doesn't change anything between us. You understand that, right? Did she? Vesper was about to execute a man who'd been coerced into betrayal, forced to choose between his sister's life and his loyalty. A man whose situation wasn't so different from her own. The parallel was uncomfortable. I understand, she texted back. It was a lie. She didn't understand anything anymore. Thursday, 11:47 p.m. The executions took place in a warehouse on the waterfront, neutral ground, as Mikhail had specified. Both families gathered, a show of unity, of strength, of what happened to traitors regardless of their reasons. Victor knelt in the center of the space, zip-tied and bleeding from Dimitri's preparation. Marco knelt beside him, in similar condition. Their eyes were different, though. Victor's defiant, Marco's defeated. Both men were about to die, and they knew it. Mikhail stood at the front of the Konstantin contingent, Vesper at his right hand. Across from them, Antonio Corvino postured and preened while Rafe stood silent and watchful. Their eyes met across the warehouse. Rafe's expression was carefully neutral, but Vesper could read the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. He didn't want this either. But like her, he had no choice. "Viktor Sokolov," Mikhail announced, his voice carrying through the warehouse. "You have been found guilty of treason against the Konstantin family. The sentence is death." He gestured to Vesper. She stepped forward, drawing her Sig Sauer with practiced ease. The weight was familiar, comforting almost. She'd done this dozens of times before. But never to someone she'd trained with. Someone she'd shared meals with. Someone whose only crime was loving his sister enough to save her. Vesper pressed the barrel to Victor's head. He looked up at her, that one visible eye holding no anger, only resignation. "Katya," he whispered. "Please." "I'm sorry," Vesper said quietly, and she was. She pulled the trigger. The sound was thunderous. Victor's body crumpled. Vesper's hand didn't shake. Her breathing didn't change. She was empty, perfect, exactly what Mikhail had made her. Except she wasn't empty, not anymore. She felt everything. The weight of Victor's death, the knowledge of his orphaned sister, the sick understanding that this could be her someday, kneeling before Mikhail's judgment for the crime of wanting something for herself. Across the warehouse, Rafe executed Marco with similar efficiency. Their eyes met again over the bodies, and Vesper saw her own horror reflected back. This was their world, violence and consequences and choices that weren't really choices at all. "Let this be a lesson," Mikhail announced. "Betrayal has only one price." The families dispersed. Bodies would be disappeared, the warehouse cleaned, everything returned to normal, as if two men hadn't just been executed for trying to save their families. Vesper walked to her car on autopilot, her mind numb. She should feel nothing. That was the training, the conditioning, the purpose of 15 years of Mikhail's careful crafting. But she felt everything, and it was overwhelming. Vesper. She turned. Rafe stood a few feet away, his expression raw with emotion he didn't bother to hide. "Not here," she said quietly. "Too many eyes." "Then where? When?" "Tomorrow. The gallery. Noon. I'll be there." He reached out like he wanted to touch her, then stopped himself. "Are you okay?" No, she wasn't okay. She might never be okay again. "I'm fine," she lied. Rafe's eyes said he knew it was a lie, but he didn't push. "Tomorrow," he said again. Vesper nodded and got in her car. In the rearview mirror, she watched Rafe walk away, his shoulders carrying the same weight hers did. They were both executioners now. Both complicit in a system that valued message-sending over mercy, fear over compassion, control over humanity. And neither of them knew how to escape it without destroying everything. Friday, 12:03 p.m. Vesper arrived at the gallery to find Rafe already there, standing in front of the same abstract painting they'd discussed before, the one about freedom and feeling without calculation. He turned when she entered, and the expression on his face, anguish mixed with relief, broke something inside her. Vesper crossed the space between them and kissed him desperately, pouring all her pain and fear and need into it. Rafe responded immediately, his arms crushing her against him like he was afraid she'd disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vesper rested her forehead against his chest. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "Do what?" "This, pretending I'm empty, executing people who don't deserve to die, being Mikhail's perfect weapon while feeling everything underneath. She looked up at him. I can't be both, Rafe. I can't be the woman you see and the weapon he needs. It's tearing me apart. Rafe's hands cupped her face. Then choose, right now, who do you want to be? It's not that simple. It is. It's the simplest and hardest thing you'll ever do. Choose yourself, Vesper. Choose to be human instead of a weapon. Choose us instead of him. And then what? We run? We abandon everything we've built? Everyone who depends on us? No. Rafe's eyes blazed with intensity. We take it. We take both organizations. Restructure them into something better. Something that doesn't require people to choose between loyalty and humanity. We build what we want, instead of living in what was built for us. You're talking about a coup, against both Mikhail and Antonio. I'm talking about revolution. Rafe's smile was sharp, dangerous. We're both second in command in our families. We're both smarter and more capable than the men we serve. Why shouldn't we be the ones in control? The idea was insane, audacious, completely impossible. And Vesper wanted it with an intensity that frightened her. Mikhail would see it coming, she said. He's not stupid. The moment I move against him. That's why we don't move until everything is in place. We spend the next few months consolidating power, winning key allies, positioning ourselves perfectly. And then, when we're ready, we move decisively. Rafe's hands slid down to grip hers. But Vesper, I need to know you're with me. Really with me, not just following orders or playing a role. Can you do that? Can you choose this? Choose us? Could she? Vesper thought about Victor, executed for trying to save his sister. About 15 years of being Mikhail's perfect weapon. Feeling nothing. Wanting nothing. Being nothing. About Rafe, who looked at her and saw a person worth fighting for instead of a tool worth using. About the possibility, terrifying and exhilarating, of being something more. Yes, she said, I choose us. Rafe's kiss was relief and promise, and the beginning of something that would either save them or destroy them. Probably both. When they broke apart, Vesper's mind was already working. We need to be smart about this. Methodical. Mikhail can't suspect. He already suspects, Rafe interrupted. He's not stupid. He knows I have feelings for you. The question is whether he knows you have feelings for me. I've been careful. You executed Victor last night and I watched you break inside. You were careful with your expression, your posture, your voice. But your eyes, Vesper, anyone who knows what to look for would see that you're not as empty as you pretend. The observation chilled her. Then we're running out of time. Which is why we need to move faster than I originally planned. Rafe pulled out his phone, showing her a document. I've been preparing for this for a while. Since before I met you, actually. Antonio is weak, ineffective. He needs to be removed. I just needed the right leverage, the right moment. Vesper scanned the document. Financial records showing Antonio's embezzlement from family accounts. Evidence of deals that violated family rules. Documented incompetence that had cost them territories. This is enough to force him out, she said. With the right support, yes, but I need your help with Mikhail. He's more formidable. What did you have in mind? I need leverage. Something that proves he's become a liability to his own organization. Something that makes removing him seem necessary instead of treasonous. Vesper was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I know where his records are kept. Financial documents, illegal operations, evidence of every crime he's committed for the past 20 years. If we could access them, we'd have everything we need to either force his retirement or expose him to authorities. Rafe's eyes gleamed. Can you get to them? Yes, but not without him knowing. The moment I access those files, alarms will trigger. Mikhail will know someone breached his security. Then we need a distraction, something big enough that he's focused elsewhere when you make the move. They spent the next hour planning, strategizing, building the framework of their coup. It was dangerous, complex, required perfect timing and flawless execution. It was also the most alive Vesper had felt in 15 years. Finally, Rafe checked the time. "We should go. We've been here too long as it is." Vesper nodded but didn't move. "Rafe?" "Yeah. If this goes wrong, if Mikhail finds out before we're ready, then we fight. Together." He pulled her close one last time. "But it won't go wrong. We're too smart, too careful. We'll make this work." Vesper wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe they could overthrow two of the most powerful crime bosses in the city and come out alive. But she'd been in this world too long to believe in fairy tales. As she left the gallery and drove back to the estate, her phone buzzed with a message from Mikhail. "My office. Immediately. We need to talk about your relationship with Corvino." Vesper's blood ran cold. He knew. Somehow, despite all their precautions, all their care, Mikhail knew. And the price of that knowledge would be everything. Chapter 7. Ashes and Rebirth. Friday, 2:47 p.m. Vesper's hands were steady on the steering wheel, despite the ice flooding her veins. "My office. Immediately. We need to talk about your relationship with Corvino." The message could mean anything. Could be routine questioning. Could be Mikhail testing her loyalty again. Could be that he'd found out everything and she was driving back to her own execution. Vesper's mind raced through options. She could run, right now, turn the car around, pick up Rafe, disappear before Mikhail could move against them. They had resources, connections, enough money to start over somewhere far away. But running meant abandoning everyone in the Konstantin organization who depended on her. Meant leaving Rafe's family vulnerable to Antonio's incompetence. Meant giving up without a fight. And Vesper had spent 15 years learning how to fight. She pulled through the estate gates at exactly 3 p.m., parked with her usual precision, and walked to Mikhail's office with her head high and her expression empty. If this was the end, she'd face it like the weapon he'd made her. Even if she was no longer just a weapon. Mikhail stood at his window, backlit by afternoon sun, exactly as he'd been 1,000 times before. But something was different in his posture. Tension, perhaps. Or anticipation. "Sit," he said without turning around. Vesper sat, her hands folded in her lap, her breathing controlled. She catalogued the room automatically. Exits, weapons, Mikhail's position relative to hers. If this went bad, she'd have maybe 3 seconds to react. Not enough time, probably. But she'd make those seconds count. "I've been reviewing the reports from the mole investigation," quote, Mikhail said, still facing the window. "The canary trap, the interrogations, the executions. You and Corvino worked very well together. The partnership is functioning as intended." "Is it?" Mikhail turned, and Vesper saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Not anger, not suspicion. Sadness. "Tell me something, Vesper. These past few weeks, working so closely with Raffaele Corvino, has it been strategy, or has it become something more?" This was it, the moment of truth. Vesper could lie, could insist it was all manipulation, all part of the plan he'd ordered. Could maintain the fiction that she was still his perfect weapon, incapable of genuine feeling. Or she could tell him the truth and face whatever came next. She thought about Rafe, about the way he looked at her like she was worth saving, about Victor's desperate plea for his sister, about 15 years of emptiness and the brief, terrifying joy of feeling human. "It became something more," she said quietly. Mikhail's expression didn't change. "I know." "You? What?" "I've known for weeks. Since the ambush, actually." He moved to his desk, pouring 2 glasses of vodka. "The way you looked at him in the hospital when you thought no one was watching. The way you hesitated before executing Victor. The way you've been carefully editing your reports to hide the depth of your involvement." Vesper's heart hammered against her ribs. "Then why didn't you?" "Kill you?" Mikhail handed her one of the glasses. "Because I wanted to see what you would do, how far you would go. Whether my perfect weapon had finally broken." "I'm not broken." "No." Mikhail sat across from her. You're not broken. You're awake. There's a difference." Vesper stared at him, trying to understand. This wasn't the confrontation she'd expected. Where was the rage, the betrayal, the immediate violence? "I don't understand," she admitted. Mikhail drained his vodka in one swallow. 15 years ago, I found a 10-year-old girl covered in her parents' blood. I could have sent her to social services, let her disappear into the system. Instead, I took her, shaped her, made her into the perfect instrument of my will. Yes. And I told myself it was necessary, that the world we live in requires people to be hard, empty, willing to do whatever it takes to survive. His eyes met hers. But, lately, I've been wondering if I was wrong. The admission shocked Vesper more than any threat could have. Mikhail didn't admit mistakes, didn't second-guess himself, didn't show weakness. "Wrong how?" she asked carefully. "I made you into a weapon, because that's what I thought you needed to be. What I thought I needed you to be." Mikhail leaned back. "But in doing so, I took away your choice, your agency, your humanity. I convinced myself it was for your own good, that you were better off as my creation than as whoever you might have become on your own. You saved me. I used you." The words were flat, final. "I dressed it up as salvation, as giving you purpose and strength. But really, I just molded a traumatized child into a tool that served my interests." Vesper didn't know what to say. This version of Mikhail, introspective, regretful, almost vulnerable, was completely foreign. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you're in love with Raffaele Corvino, and he's in love with you, and that terrifies you because you think it makes you weak. You think I'll kill you for feeling something." Mikhail's smile was bitter. "And the tragedy is, a month ago, I probably would have. And now? Now I'm 55 years old, looking at everything I've built, and realizing it's all ashes. Power without purpose, control without connection. I've spent 30 years accumulating wealth and influence, and for what? To die alone, surrounded by people who fear me but don't love me, who'll celebrate my death the moment it comes." He stood, moving back to the window. "You were supposed to be different, my legacy, the proof that I could create something perfect. But perfection, it turns out, is just another word for empty." Vesper's throat tightened. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to be honest. Really honest. Maybe for the first time since I've known you." Mikhail turned to face her. "If you could choose, if there were no consequences, no obligations, no fear of death, what would you choose? This life or something else?" The question was a trap. Had to be. Mikhail didn't ask hypotheticals. Everything was strategy, manipulation, testing. But looking at his face, seeing the genuine curiosity there, Vesper decided to risk the truth. "Something else," she said softly. "I'd choose to be someone who feels things without calculating the cost, who loves without permission, who's more than just a weapon." "And Corvino? If you could choose him without consequences, would you?" "Yes." Mikhail nodded slowly, as if she'd confirmed something he already suspected. "Then choose him." Vesper's breath caught. "What?" "Choose him. Choose yourself. Choose whatever life you want that doesn't involve being my right hand." Mikhail's expression was unreadable. "I'm releasing you from your obligations to this family, effective immediately." I don't understand. Is this a test?" "No test, no trap, just," he gestured helplessly, "just an old man realizing he destroyed something beautiful by trying to make it perfect." "You're letting me go," Vesper said it aloud, trying to make it real. "Just like that, after 15 years. "Not just like that, on one condition." There it was, the catch. "What condition?" Vesper asked warily. "That you promise me something." Mikhail moved closer. "Promise me that whatever you build with Corvino, whatever life you create, you'll do it better than I did. With humanity instead of fear. With trust instead of control. Promise me you won't become what I became." The request was so unexpected, so raw, that Vesper didn't know how to respond. "I promise," she heard herself say. "Good," Mikhail smiled, genuinely smiled, not the cold calculation she was used to, but something almost warm. Then go. Before I change my mind and decide I can't live without my perfect weapon after all. Vesper stood, her legs unsteady. This couldn't be real. Mikhail didn't just let people go, didn't release his weapons, didn't... Why? She asked. Why are you really doing this? Mikhail was quiet for a long moment. Then, because Victor begged you to save his sister, and I saw the look on your face when you killed him anyway. Because you've been dying by inches for 15 years, and I finally realized I was the one killing you. Because... His voice cracked slightly. Because if I have any humanity left, any capacity for love instead of possession, I need to prove it by letting you go. Even if it costs me everything. Vesper's eyes burned. She'd never cried in front of Mikhail. Crying was weakness, vulnerability, everything he'd taught her to suppress. But these weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were something else entirely. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. I don't deserve it. Mikhail turned back to the window, dismissing her. Go, live, be more than I made you. That's all the thanks I need. Vesper walked to the door, then paused. What will you tell the others? Dmitri, Alexei, they'll want to know why I'm leaving. I'll tell them the truth, that you've earned your freedom, that you're released from service, with my blessing and my gratitude. He glanced over his shoulder. And Vesper, when you and Corvino inevitably take over both organizations, and we both know that's the plan, don't destroy everything I built. Reform it. Make it better. Give it the humanity. I couldn't. So he knew about the coup too. Of course he did. Mikhail knew everything. I will, Vesper promised. She left the office in a daze, walking through the estate that had been her home, her prison, for 15 years. Memories assaulted her at every turn. Training in the basement. Meals in the dining room. Endless nights in her sterile apartment. Feeling nothing. Being nothing. She'd been so certain this would end in violence. In death, hers or Mikhail's, or both. Instead, it ended in release. In permission. In freedom she didn't know how to use. Vesper made it to her apartment before the tears came. Great, racking sobs that shook her whole body. 15 years of suppressed emotion, pouring out all at once, overwhelming and terrifying and somehow cleansing. She cried for the child she'd been, scared and alone and covered in blood, for the teenager molded into a weapon, taught that feeling was weakness. For the woman who'd spent 15 years as nothing but an instrument of someone else's will. And finally, she cried for herself. For Vesper, whoever that was beneath the armor and conditioning and carefully constructed emptiness. Her phone rang. Rafe. Vesper answered, her voice raw. It's done. What's done? Vesper, are you okay? You sound... I'm free, she laughed, the sound half hysteria. Mikhail knows everything. About us, about the coup, all of it, and he's letting me go. Silence. Then, I'm coming to get you. Where are you? My apartment at the estate. But Rafe, he knows about the coup. I don't care. Stay there. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The call ended. Vesper sat on her bed, surrounded by the impersonal decor of a life unlived, and waited. For the first time in 15 years, she was waiting for something she wanted instead of something she was ordered to do. The difference was terrifying and exhilarating. Friday, 4:23 p.m. Rafe burst through the door exactly 18 minutes later, his eyes wild with concern. He took one look at Vesper, tear-stained, shaking, clearly in shock, and crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. Tell me everything, he said into her hair. So she did. Mikhail's admission, his regrets, his release of her from service, his knowledge of the coup and his blessing to reform rather than destroy. Rafe pulled back to look at her. That's not what I expected. Me neither. Do you believe him? That it's not a trap? Vesper thought about Mikhail's expression, the genuine sadness in his eyes, the way his voice had cracked when admitting he'd destroyed her by trying to make her perfect. Yes, she said. I think he meant it. I think he finally saw what he'd done to me and couldn't live with it anymore. So you're free. Rafe's hands cupped her face. Really free. You can walk away from all of this. Could she? Vesper had spent 15 years being Mikhail's right hand. It was the only identity she had, the only purpose she knew. Without it, who was she? I don't know how to be free, she admitted. I don't know how to be anything except his weapon. Then let me teach you. Rafe's kiss was soft, gentle. Let me show you who you are when you're not performing for anyone, when you're just Vesper. And who is that? I don't know yet, but I'm excited to find out. Vesper leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. What about the coup? Mikhail said he knows, said we should reform instead of destroy. But your situation with Antonio is still the same. My brother is weak, incompetent, and actively harming the family. With or without Mikhail's blessing, I need to remove him from power. Rafe's expression turned calculating. But this changes the timeline. If Mikhail's actually stepping back, if he's willing to let us restructure things, we can move faster than I thought. How fast? A week, maybe 2. I'll confront Antonio with the evidence of his embezzlement. Force him to step down. He paused. Actually, you don't have to do anything. You're free, Vesper. You can walk away from all of this. The offer was genuine, tempting even. Vesper could leave right now, start a new life, somewhere Mikhail's shadow couldn't reach. She could be normal, ordinary, free of the violence and darkness that had defined her existence. But looking at Rafe, thinking about the organizations that would still exist even if she left, the people who depended on their leadership. No, she said. I'm not walking away, not completely. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, but I want to. Mikhail was right. We can make this better. We can build something that doesn't require people to be empty weapons. That values humanity instead of fear. Vesper met his eyes. I spent 15 years being made into something I'm not. Maybe I can spend the next 15 becoming something I choose to be. Rafe's smile was brilliant. Then we do this together, partners in everything. Partners, Vesper agreed, but Rafe, I need time. Time to figure out who I am, without Mikhail defining me. Time to learn how to feel things without it destroying me. Can you give me that? I'll give you whatever you need. He kissed her forehead. But Vesper, you're not doing this alone. I'm with you, every step. They spent the next hour planning, not the coup anymore, but the transition. How to remove Antonio without triggering a family war. How to restructure both organizations to be less brutal, more strategic. How to build something new from the ashes of what Mikhail and Antonio had created. It was ambitious, dangerous, probably impossible. But for the first time in 15 years, Vesper felt like she was building something instead of destroying it. I should pack, she said eventually, looking around her apartment. Move out of the estate. Move in with me, Rafe said immediately. Or we can get a place together, somewhere neutral, somewhere that's ours instead of theirs. I'd like that, Vesper smiled. A real smile, genuine and unguarded. Somewhere with windows. And color, and things that aren't chosen for strategic value. I know just the place. Rafe pulled out his phone, showing her photos of a penthouse overlooking the city. I bought it 6 months ago, been waiting for the right reason to move in. This seems like the right reason. The space was beautiful, all light and openness, the opposite of the controlled environment she'd lived in for 15 years. It's perfect, Vesper said. They packed her things together, which didn't take long since Vesper owned almost nothing personal. Clothes, weapons, a few books. 15 years condensed into 3 suitcases. That's it? Rafe asked, looking around the stripped apartment. That's it. Everything else belongs to Mikhail. Then we'll fill the new place with things that belong to you. Art you actually like, books you want to read, furniture you choose because it's comfortable instead of strategic. The idea made Vesper's chest tight with emotion she didn't know how to process. I don't know what I like. I've never thought about it. Then we'll figure it out together. Rafe picked up 2 of the suitcases. Come on, let's go home. Home. The word felt foreign and wonderful. As they loaded the car, Vesper took one last look at the estate. Mikhail stood at his study window, watching them leave. Their eyes met across the distance. He raised his glass in a silent toast. Vesper raised her hand in acknowledgement. Then she got in the car, and Rafe drove them away from everything she'd been toward everything she might become. Friday, 8:34 p.m. The penthouse was everything Vesper hadn't known she wanted. Open, bright, filled with possibilities instead of obligations. Rafe ordered dinner from her favorite restaurant, except Vesper realized she didn't have a favorite restaurant, had never thought about preferences or desires beyond what served the mission. "Then we'll try everything," Rafe said, ordering an absurd amount of food from multiple places, "and you can figure out what you actually like." They ate on the floor, surrounded by takeout containers, trying different cuisines and debating flavors. Vesper discovered she liked Thai food, hated overly sweet desserts, and had opinions about wine she'd never bothered to notice before. It was the most normal, mundane, wonderful evening of her life. Later, curled up on the couch with Rafe's arm around her and the city lights spread out below them, Vesper felt something she'd never felt before. Peace. "What are you thinking?" Rafe asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "That I don't know how to do this. Be normal. Be happy. Be," she gestured helplessly, "be anything except what I was." "You don't have to know how. You just have to be willing to try." He kissed her temple. "And Vesper, you're already doing it. Right now, this moment, you're being happy, being at peace, being yourself." Was she? Vesper had spent so long performing, calculating, being whatever the situation required, that she didn't know what herself looked like. But sitting here, in Rafe's arms, feeling safe and wanted and human, maybe this was it. Maybe this was who she was beneath all the armor. "I love you," she said, the words coming easier this time. "I know I should probably wait, should be more certain, but I love you too." Rafe's smile was soft. "Have since that first meeting. Will probably love you for the rest of my life." "Even though I'm broken?" "You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." He pulled her closer. "And I'll be here for all of it. The good days and the hard ones. The moments when you know who you are, and the moments when you're lost. All of it." Vesper kissed him, slow and deep, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we take over the world." Rafe's grin was wicked. "Or at least 2 criminal organizations, whichever comes first. And after that? After that, we build something better. Something that doesn't require people to choose between humanity and survival." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "We make the world we want to live in, instead of accepting the one we were given." It sounded impossible, idealistic, the kind of dream that got people killed in their world. But looking at Rafe, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her, Vesper thought maybe, just maybe, impossible was worth fighting for. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." "Yeah? Yeah," Vesper smiled. "Let's burn it all down and build something beautiful from the ashes." Rafe's answering smile was everything, pride and love and fierce determination. "That's my girl," he said. And for the first time in 15 years, Vesper didn't correct him. Because she was his girl, not his weapon, not his tool, but his partner, his equal, his love. She was Vesper, not Mikhail's creation, not the perfect empty weapon, but herself, whoever that turned out to be. And she was finally, terrifyingly, beautifully free. The rest would come, the coup, the restructuring, the building of something new from the rubble of the old. But tonight, Vesper just wanted to be here, in this moment, with this man, learning how to be human after 15 years of being a weapon. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done, and the most worthwhile. Outside, the city glittered with a million lights, each one a life being lived, a choice being made, a story unfolding. Vesper's story was just beginning, and for the first time, she was the one writing it. Chapter 8. The Right Hand's Choice. 2 weeks later, Monday, 6:47 p.m. The Corvino family meeting room was packed with tension and barely concealed hostility. Antonio sat at the head of the table, his expensive suit doing nothing to hide the nervous sweat beading his forehead. Around him, the family's senior advisors shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Antonio and Rafe. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. Vesper stood against the back wall, observing. She wasn't officially part of this, wasn't a Corvino, wasn't even technically part of any organization anymore. But Rafe had asked her to be there, and she'd discovered in the past 2 weeks that saying yes to things she wanted was getting easier. Rafe stood near the windows, backlit by the setting sun, his expression calm and controlled, but Vesper could read the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightness around his eyes. This was it, the moment they'd been planning for. "Thank you all for coming," Rafe began, his voice carrying easily through the room. "I know this meeting was called on short notice, but we have urgent family business to discuss." "What business?" Antonio demanded, trying to sound authoritative but achieving only petulant. "I'm the head of this family. If there's urgent business, I should be the one calling meetings." "That's actually what we need to discuss." Rafe pulled out a tablet, swiping to display financial records on the large screen behind him. "These are the family's financial statements from the past 18 months. Notice anything unusual?" The room went silent as everyone studied the numbers. Luca, the enforcer, was the first to speak. "There's money missing. A lot of money. $3.7 million to be precise." Rafe swiped to another screen. "And here's where it went. A series of transfers to offshore accounts. Accounts controlled by Antonio." Antonio shot to his feet. "That's a lie. Those records are fabricated. They're from our own accounting system. Marco verified them before." Rafe paused, a flash of pain crossing his face. Before his death. He knew about the embezzlement, but was too afraid to come forward. "This is a coup," Antonio snarled, his composure cracking. "You're trying to take my place, little brother. You've always been jealous." "I'm trying to save this family from your incompetence." Rafe's voice was ice. "The embezzlement is only part of it. You've lost 3 territories in the past year because you were too busy partying to notice the Bratva moving in. You've made deals that violated family codes, endangered our people, shown consistently poor judgment." He pulled up more documents, each one damning, each one proof of Antonio's failures. "I've brought this to the family advisors," Rafe continued, "and they've agreed. You're unfit to lead. Step down voluntarily and we'll give you a generous settlement. Force us to remove you, and you leave with nothing." Antonio's face went purple with rage. "You can't do this. I'm the eldest. It's my birthright." "Birthright doesn't mean shit if you're destroying what you inherited." Luca stood, his massive frame intimidating even across the room. "I'm with Rafe. You've been a disaster as boss, Antonio. Time to accept it." One by one, the other advisors stood. Some looked relieved, others resigned, but all of them were clearly on Rafe's side. Antonio looked around the room, seeing his authority crumble in real time. His eyes landed on Vesper. "This is her doing, isn't it? The Konstantin bitch got her claws into you, turned you against your own blood." Vesper moved before anyone could react, crossing the room in 3 strides and grabbing Antonio by the throat. She slammed him against the wall with enough force to rattle his teeth, her forearm pressed against his windpipe. "Call me that again," she said softly, her voice deadly calm, "and I'll show you exactly what this bitch is capable of." "Vesper." Rafe's voice was gentle but firm. "He's not worth it." She held Antonio's terrified gaze for another moment, then released him. He crumpled against the wall, gasping. "You're right," Vesper said, stepping back. "He's not." Rafe turned back to Antonio, who was clutching his throat and glaring with impotent rage. "You have 24 hours to decide," Rafe said. Step down with dignity, or be removed without it. Your choice." "This isn't over," Antonio wheezed. "You'll regret this." "The meeting is adjourned," Rafe said, cutting him off. "Everyone except Antonio can leave." The advisors filed out, several pausing to shake Rafe's hand or nod their approval. When the room was empty except for Rafe, Vesper, and Antonio, Rafe's expression softened slightly. "I don't want to destroy you, brother," he said quietly. "Your family. But I can't let you destroy us either. Take the settlement. Disappear. Live a quiet life somewhere. It's more than generous considering what you've done." "I'll never forgive you for this," Antonio said, but the fight had gone out of him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "I know. I'll have to live with that." Rafe moved toward the door, then paused. "But I'll sleep better knowing the family is safe. That's worth your hatred." Monday, 9:15 p.m. Back at the penthouse, Vesper poured 2 glasses of whiskey while Rafe loosened his tie and collapsed onto the couch. "That went better than expected," he said, accepting the glass she offered. "Did it? You just overthrew your own brother." "I removed a liability who happened to be my brother. There's a difference." Rafe took a long drink. "How do you feel about it?" "That was the first time you've used violence since." "Since I stopped being Mikhail's weapon?" Vesper settled beside him. "It felt different. I wasn't empty when I did it. I was angry. Genuinely angry that he insulted me, insulted us. That's new. Good new or bad new? I don't know yet." She stared at her whiskey. "I didn't hurt him badly. Didn't want to. A month ago I would have broken his neck without hesitation. Now I just wanted him to shut up." "That's growth." Rafe's arm settled around her shoulders. "You're learning to calibrate, to use violence as a tool when necessary, instead of a default response." "Is that what you do?" "I try. Doesn't always work. There are times when brutality is the only language people understand. But I prefer to exhaust other options first." He kissed her temple. "You'll figure out your own balance. Give it time." Vesper's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Impressive display tonight, though I taught you better control than to let anger dictate your actions. Mikhail." Still watching, apparently. Vesper showed Rafe the message. He frowned. "Is this going to be a problem, him monitoring you?" "I don't think so. He said he was letting me go, and I believe him. But old habits?" She shrugged. "He spent 15 years watching everything I did. Can't expect him to stop completely overnight." She texted back. "I had complete control. I chose not to seriously hurt him. That's different from losing control." The response came quickly. "Indeed it is. Well done. How's the new life treating you?" Vesper stared at the message, surprised by the genuine interest in it. "Complicated. Good. Terrifying. As it should be. Freedom always is. Give my regards to Corvino. He's good for you." The conversation ended there. Vesper set down her phone, feeling oddly emotional. "He's trying," she said quietly. "In his own way. Letting go, giving me space. That must be hard for him. 15 years of control, and now he has to trust that his weapon won't be used against him." Vesper met Rafe's eyes. "Will I be? Used against him? Do you want to be?" It was a fair question. Vesper had every reason to hate Mikhail, to want revenge for 15 years of emotional manipulation and forced emptiness. But when she thought about him, about the sadness in his eyes when he'd released her, the genuine regret in his voice, she didn't feel hatred. She felt something closer to pity. "No," she said. "He's a broken man who broke me, trying to fix himself. That's tragedy, not villainy. I don't want revenge. I just want to move forward." "Then that's what we'll do." Rafe pulled her closer. "Speaking of which, I talked to the family advisors after the meeting. They want to know what your role will be in the new organization." "My role?" Vesper blinked. "I don't have a role. I'm not part of the Corvino family." "You could be, if you wanted." Rafe's expression was careful, neutral. "They're impressed with you, your intelligence, your capabilities, your strategic mind. They'd welcome you as my second-in-command. The offer was tempting. Vesper had spent 15 years being someone's right hand. It was what she knew, what she was good at. But it was also what she'd just escaped. "I don't know if I want to be anyone's second-in-command anymore," she said slowly, "even yours." "Then what do you want?" Vesper thought about it. Really thought about it, without calculating strategic advantage or measuring against someone else's expectations. "I want to build something new," she said finally. "Not just reform what exists, but create something entirely different. A consulting firm, maybe. Security and strategy for businesses that need help navigating the gray areas between legal and illegal." "That's brilliant." Rafe's eyes lit up. "You'd be using all your skills. Analysis, planning, understanding how criminal organizations think, but for legitimate clients. Building your own empire instead of serving someone else's. It's just an idea. It's a great idea. And I can help. Provide seed money, connections, initial clients." He was already thinking strategically, planning. "We could position it as part of the family's legitimate business interests, give you access to resources without making you subservient to the organization." Vesper felt something warm bloom in her chest. Excitement, maybe, anticipation, hope. "You'd really do that?" "Support me building something separate from your family." "Vesper, I don't want you to be my right hand. I want you to be my partner, in business, in life, in everything." "That means supporting your dreams, not subsuming them into mine." Rafe cupped her face in his hands. "I love you. I want you happy and fulfilled and building the life you choose. If that life is separate from the Corvino organization, then that's what it is." The words undid her. Vesper had spent 15 years being valued only for her utility, her obedience, her willingness to subsume herself into Mikhail's vision. But Rafe valued her autonomy, her independence, her right to choose her own path. "I love you too," she said, the words coming easier every time. "And yes, let's do it. Let's build something new." They spent the rest of the evening planning, not a coup this time, but a business. Vesper Konstantin Consulting, independent but allied with the Corvino family. Legitimate but fluent in the language of the underground. A bridge between worlds, built by someone who'd lived in both. It felt right in a way nothing else ever had. 3 months later, Friday, 2:34 p.m., Vesper's office overlooked the financial district from the 20th floor of a building Rafe had helped her acquire. The space was hers, decorated with art she'd chosen because it spoke to her, furnished with pieces she found comfortable rather than strategic, filled with light and color and life. She'd just finished a consultation with a tech CEO whose company was being extorted by a mid-level gang. The solution had been elegant, a combination of legal pressure, strategic information leaks, and a carefully worded message delivered through channels the gang would understand. No violence necessary, just intelligence, strategy, and the reputation Vesper had built in 3 short months as someone who got results. Her phone rang. Rafe. "How did the Nakamura meeting go?" he asked. "Resolved. They'll have their extortion problem handled by Monday." Vesper leaned back in her chair, smiling. "I'm getting good at this." "You were always good at this. You're just doing it for yourself now instead of someone else." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Speaking of which, I have news. Antonio formally signed the papers this morning. He's out, I'm in, and the transition is complete. How do you feel?" "Terrified, exhilarated, determined not to fuck it up." Rafe paused. "I'm implementing the changes we discussed, restructuring the organization to be less brutal, more strategic. Some of the old guard are pushing back, but most are willing to try the new approach. Give it time. Change is always resisted at first. Says the woman who reinvented herself completely in 3 months. I had good motivation." Vesper looked at the photo on her desk, her and Rafe at the penthouse, both laughing at something, looking genuinely happy, and good support. "Same. Which brings me to my actual reason for calling." Rafe's voice softened. "Marry me." Vesper nearly dropped her phone. What? Marry me. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But Vesper, I want this. I want you. I want to build a life together. Officially and permanently. So marry me. That's not a question. That's a command. Fine. Will you marry me? Vesper's heart raced. Marriage was permanent, official, a commitment that went beyond love into legal and social binding. A month ago, the idea would have terrified her. Now, it just felt right. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Rafe's laugh was pure joy. Yeah? Yeah. Though we're doing this properly, you're getting down on one knee with a ring and everything. Deal. Tonight. Dinner at Meridian. Then I'll propose properly. His voice dropped. I love you, Vesper. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. I love you too. The words still felt new. Still made her chest tight with emotion. See you tonight. After the call ended, Vesper sat in her office, looking out at the city she'd once seen only as a battlefield. Now it looked different, full of possibility instead of danger, opportunity instead of threat. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Mikhail. I heard about the Nakamura situation. Well handled. You're building something impressive. I'm proud of you. Vesper stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Thank you. For everything, the training, the release, the space to become who I'm meant to be. I know it wasn't easy for you. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Be happy, Vesper. That's all I ask. I am. For the first time in 15 years, I really am. She set down her phone and returned to work, a smile playing on her lips. Tonight, Rafe would propose. She'd say yes. They'd start planning a future together. Marriage, maybe eventually children. A life built on choice rather than obligation. But for now, she had a business to run, clients to help, a reputation to build. She was Vesper Konstantin, not Mikhail's weapon, not anyone's right hand. Just herself, complex, flawed, still learning, still growing, still figuring out what it meant to be human after 15 years of being a tool. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. And the most worthwhile. Friday, 8:47 p.m. The private dining room at Meridian was exactly as Vesper remembered from that first coordination meeting. Elegant, intimate, perfect. But everything else was different. Rafe had transformed the space with candles and flowers, soft music playing from hidden speakers. He'd clearly put thought into this, into making it special. This is beautiful, Vesper said, taking in the scene. You're beautiful. Rafe pulled out her chair. And I figured if I was going to do this properly, I should do it right. They ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing. Vesper shared stories from her week. The Nakamura case, a new client she'd taken on, progress on a security protocol she was designing. Rafe talked about the organizational restructuring, the resistance he was facing, his plans for making the Corvino family less brutal and more strategic. It was normal, domestic, the kind of conversation partners had over dinner. Vesper had never been happier. Finally, as dessert was cleared away, Rafe stood. He moved around the table and, as promised, got down on one knee. Vesper Konstantin, he said, pulling out a ring box. 3 months ago, you were convinced you were nothing but a weapon. Empty, broken, incapable of being anything more than what Mikhail made you. But I've watched you become so much more than that. You've built a business, made your own choices, learned to feel and want and live. You've become fully, beautifully human. He opened the box, revealing a ring, emerald, to match her eyes, set in platinum with smaller diamonds flanking it. I love every version of you, the weapon you were, the woman you are, the person you're still becoming. I want to spend the rest of my life watching you grow and change and discover who you are. So, Vesper, will you marry me? Vesper's vision blurred with tears. Happy tears this time, not the anguished sobs of release, but pure, uncomplicated joy. Yes, she said, her voice thick with emotion, 1,000 times yes. Rafe slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. The kiss was deep and thorough and filled with promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Rafe rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to make you so happy," he murmured. "You already do," Vesper smiled. "Every single day." They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the city lights glittering beyond the windows. Vesper thought about the journey that had brought her here, from that first meeting where Rafe had seen her as more than a weapon, through the ambush and the coup and the terrifying process of becoming human again. It had been hard, painful, required sacrifice and courage in choosing herself over everything she'd been taught to value. But standing here, in Rafe's arms, wearing his ring and planning a future together, it had been worth it. All of it. "What are you thinking?" Rafe asked. "That I'm glad you saw me when I was invisible, that you made me human when I was a weapon, that you gave me a choice when I thought I had none. Those were your vows earlier, word for word." Vesper pulled back to look at him. "What?" "When I was planning this proposal, I imagined what you might say during our wedding vows, and you just said exactly what I imagined." Rafe's smile was soft. "Great minds think alike, I guess. Or we just know each other that well." "That too." They returned to their seats, hands intertwined across the table, and talked about the future. The wedding, small and intimate, they both agreed. The business, Vesper's consulting firm, was growing faster than expected. The family, Rafe's restructuring, was working, slowly but surely. Everything was falling into place. But as the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Vesper felt a flutter of uncertainty. "Rafe? What if I mess this up? What if I don't know how to be a wife, how to be in a healthy relationship, how to—" "Then we'll figure it out together." Rafe squeezed her hand. "Vesper, neither of us knows what we're doing. We're both making this up as we go. But we're doing it together, and that makes all the difference." He was right. They were both broken in their own ways, both learning how to be better, both choosing each other despite the risks and uncertainty. "Okay," Vesper said. "Together. Always." As they left the restaurant and drove home through the glittering city, Vesper looked at the ring on her finger. Physical proof that someone loved her, chose her, wanted to build a life with her. For 15 years she'd been Mikhail's right hand, his perfect weapon, his masterpiece of controlled violence. Now she was just Vesper, consultant, fiancé, woman, human. Still learning, still growing, still figuring out who she was beneath all the armor. But no longer alone. And that made all the difference. The city lights blurred past the window as Rafe drove, his hand warm in hers, their future stretching out before them like an unwritten story. Vesper had spent 15 years being what others needed her to be. Now, finally, she was becoming what she wanted to be. And it was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely perfectly right. The right hand had made her choice. And for the first time in her life, it was her choice to make. Epilogue: the woman, not the weapon. 1 year later, the wedding was nothing like what either family expected. No ostentatious display of wealth, no hundreds of guests to impress, no performance, no strategy, no calculation. Just 30 people who genuinely mattered, gathered in a garden overlooking the ocean, as the sun set in shades of gold and crimson. Vesper stood in a small room off the garden, staring at her reflection and barely recognizing herself. The dress was simple, ivory silk that draped rather than constricted, elegant without being showy. Her hair fell in loose waves instead of that severe chignon she'd worn for 15 years. Minimal makeup, a bouquet of wildflowers instead of orchestrated arrangements. She looked soft, happy, human. "You ready?" Vesper turned to find Mikhail in the doorway, impeccable in a dark suit, his silver hair gleaming. Over the past year, they'd maintained a careful distance. Messages occasionally, a few brief meetings. The slow rebuilding of something that wasn't quite father-daughter but wasn't entirely lost either. She'd asked him to walk her down the aisle. He'd cried when he said yes. "I think so," Vesper said, "though I keep waiting for something to go wrong." Old habits. Mikhail moved into the room, his eyes suspiciously bright as he took her in. You look beautiful, not like a weapon at all. Is that a compliment? The highest one I can give, he offered his arm. Shall we? Vesper took it, and they walked toward the garden together, the man who'd made her into a weapon and the woman who'd learned to be more. The music started, not a traditional wedding march, but something modern and flowing. Guests stood, turning to watch. And there, at the end of the aisle, was Rafe. He wore a charcoal suit, his expression a mixture of awe and love, and barely contained emotion. When their eyes met, his face broke into the most brilliant smile she'd ever seen. Vesper's breath caught. A year ago, she'd been convinced she was incapable of this, of love, of happiness, of being someone's partner instead of someone's weapon. Now, walking toward Rafe with Mikhail at her side, she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Halfway down the aisle, Mikhail squeezed her arm gently. I'm sorry, he whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, for everything I took from you, everything you had to fight to reclaim. Vesper looked at him, this complicated man who'd saved her and broken her, and ultimately released her. I know, she said, and I forgive you. His eyes shone with tears he didn't let fall. When they reached Rafe, Mikhail placed Vesper's hand in his with unexpected ceremony. Take care of her, Mikhail said quietly. She's the best thing I ever created, even if I created her all wrong. I will, Rafe promised. Every day for the rest of my life. Mikhail nodded and stepped back, taking his seat beside Dmitri and Alexei, both looking uncomfortable in formal wear but genuinely happy for her. The ceremony was brief, personal, perfect. The officiant spoke about choice and partnership, about becoming rather than being, about love as an action rather than just a feeling. Then came the vows. Rafe went first, his voice steady, despite the emotion in his eyes. Vesper, when I first met you, I saw a woman who'd been told her whole life that she was nothing but a weapon. That feeling was weakness, that wanting was vulnerability, that being human was a liability. And I fell in love with you anyway, not despite who you were, but because underneath all that armor, I saw someone extraordinary trying to break free. He squeezed her hands. You've spent this past year becoming the most incredible version of yourself. You've built a business, made your own choices, learned to feel without fear. You've become fully, beautifully human, and I'm honored, so deeply honored, that you've chosen to share that humanity with me. His voice cracked slightly. I promise to always see you as you are, not as what anyone made you to be. I promise to support your choices, even when they're different from mine. I promise to love you through the easy days and the hard ones, through the moments when you know who you are and the moments when you're still figuring it out. You're not my weapon, not my possession, not my anything, except my partner, my equal, my love. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life proving that to you. Vesper's vision blurred with tears. She took a shaky breath, trying to compose herself enough to speak her own vows. Rafe, she began, her voice soft but steady. A year ago, I didn't know how to be anything except what Mikhail made me. I didn't know how to feel, how to want, how to choose myself over duty and obligation. I thought I was broken beyond repair, too empty to ever be filled with anything real. She looked into his eyes, letting him see everything, the fear, the love, the overwhelming gratitude. Then you saw me, really saw me, when I was invisible to myself. You treated me like a person, instead of a tool. You made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be more than a weapon. And slowly, terrifyingly, you taught me how to be human again. Her thumb brushed over his knuckles. You gave me a choice when I thought I had none. You showed me that wanting something for myself wasn't selfish or weak, but brave. You proved that I could feel everything without it destroying me. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. The tears spilled over now, but Vesper didn't care. I promise to keep choosing you every day for the rest of my life. I promise to be your partner, not your subordinate, to challenge you when you're wrong and support you when you're right. I promise to keep becoming, to keep growing, to never stop fighting, to be the woman you see when you look at me, instead of the weapon I was made to be." She smiled through the tears. "You saved me, Rafe, not by fixing me, but by showing me I was worth saving. And I will love you for that, and for everything else, until the day I die." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even Mikhail had his hand pressed to his mouth, his shoulders shaking slightly. The officiant, also clearly emotional, cleared her throat. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss." Rafe didn't wait for her to finish. He pulled Vesper against him and kissed her like she was air, and he was drowning, like she was light, and he'd been in darkness like she was everything, and he'd spent his whole life waiting to find her. Vesper kissed him back, with equal fervor, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and overwhelming joy into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, the garden erupted in applause. "I present to you," the officiant said, laughing, "Mr. and Mrs. Corvino." Later, during the reception, the celebration was intimate, joyful, free of the usual tensions that plagued family gatherings. Konstantin and Corvino members mingled freely, united by genuine happiness for the couple, rather than forced political alliance. Vesper danced with Rafe under strings of lights as the sun set completely, the ocean breeze cool against her skin. "Happy?" Rafe asked, his hand warm on her waist. "Impossibly, terrifyingly happy," Vesper admitted. "I keep waiting for it to feel wrong or artificial, but it doesn't. It just feels right," Rafe finished. "Because it is right. This is what life is supposed to feel like when you're living it, instead of just surviving it." Across the garden, Vesper caught sight of Mikhail standing alone, watching them dance. Their eyes met, and he raised his glass in a silent toast, the same gesture he'd made when she'd left the estate a year ago. This time, Vesper raised hers back. A year ago, that gesture had meant goodbye, release, the end of one life and the terrifying beginning of another. Now it meant something different. Acknowledgement, perhaps. Respect. The complicated love between a broken man and the woman he'd broken who'd somehow found a way to heal. Later, Mikhail approached during a break in the music. "May I have this dance?" he asked formally. Vesper glanced at Rafe, who nodded encouragingly. She took Mikhail's hand, letting him lead her in a surprisingly graceful waltz. "You've done well," Mikhail said quietly. "The business, the marriage, the life you've built. It's everything I should have wanted for you from the beginning." "Why didn't you?" "Fear, mostly. Fear that if you were fully human, fully feeling, you'd be vulnerable. That the world would destroy you the way it destroyed your parents." His eyes were distant. "I thought making you into a weapon would keep you safe. Instead, I just made you empty." "Not empty," Vesper corrected. "Never empty. Just compressed. Everything I should have been feeling for 15 years, pushed down so deep I thought it was gone. But it was always there, waiting. And now? Now I feel everything. It's overwhelming sometimes, terrifying often, but I wouldn't go back to being empty for anything." Mikhail smiled, genuine, sad, proud. "Good, that's good." As the dance ended, he pulled her into an unexpected embrace. "Thank you," he whispered, "for forgiving me, for becoming who you were meant to be despite what I made you, for proving that my biggest mistake could still become something beautiful." "You're welcome," Vesper said, her voice thick. "And Mikhail, thank you for letting me go. I know it cost you everything." "No." He pulled back, cupping her face briefly. "Letting you go gave me something back, proof that I'm capable of love instead of just possession. That's worth more than any weapon, no matter how perfect." He stepped away, returning to his table. Vesper watched him go, feeling the complicated tangle of emotions she'd learned to accept. Love and anger, gratitude and resentment, forgiveness and memory all coexisting. She was still processing when Rafe appeared at her side. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking about how far I've come, how different everything is." "Different good?" Vesper looked around the garden, at Rafe's family celebrating genuinely, At her former colleagues from the Konstantin organization, looking relaxed and happy. At Mikhail sitting alone but peaceful. At the life she'd built from the ashes of the one that was built for her. Different, amazing, she said. Midnight. Most of the guests had left. Only a few remained. Close friends, immediate family. People who'd earned the right to see the couple's joy unfiltered by performance or propriety. Vesper and Rafe stood at the edge of the garden, looking out at the moonlight on the ocean, his arms around her waist and her head resting on his shoulder. "What are you thinking?" Rafe asked. "That a year ago, I couldn't have imagined this. Being happy, being married, being," she gestured helplessly, "being myself. And now? Now I can't imagine anything else." Vesper turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me this, Rafe. This life, this happiness, this—" "No," he cut her off gently. "You gave this to yourself. I just showed you it was possible. You're the one who did the hard work, the feeling, the growing, the choosing. Don't give me credit for your own courage." Vesper kissed him, slow and deep, pouring everything she couldn't articulate into it. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she said, "more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." "I love you too, and Vesper?" He pulled back slightly to meet her eyes. "I'm proud of you, for everything you've overcome, everything you've become. You're the strongest person I know. I'm the most broken person you know." "You're the most healed," Rafe corrected. "There's a difference. Broken implies you're still damaged, but you're not damaged anymore. You're rebuilt. Stronger than before, because you chose how to put the pieces back together." The words settled into Vesper's chest, warm and true. She wasn't Mikhail's weapon anymore. Wasn't even Mikhail's masterpiece, broken and discarded. She was Vesper Corvino, consultant, wife, woman, human. Built from her own choices instead of someone else's design. "Come on," Rafe said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." Home. Their penthouse, overlooking the city, filled with things they'd chosen together, art and books and comfortable furniture that served no strategic purpose except making them happy. A life they'd built from scratch, founded on choice and love and the terrifying freedom of being themselves. As they drove through the night, hands intertwined, Vesper thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the 10-year-old girl covered in blood, to the perfect empty weapon, to the woman learning to feel, to the person she was now, whole, healed, human. It had been the hardest transformation imaginable. Required sacrificing everything familiar, facing fears she didn't know she had, choosing herself when every instinct screamed to submit to someone else's will. But looking at Rafe beside her, feeling the weight of her wedding ring, thinking about the life stretching out before them, it had been worth every terrifying step. "What are you thinking?" Rafe asked, glancing over. Vesper smiled. "That I'm finally free, really, truly free. Not just from Mikhail, but from the idea that I have to be what anyone else needs me to be." "And what do you want to be?" "Exactly who I am right now, your wife, my own person. Someone who chooses love over fear, feeling over emptiness, life over mere survival." "That's who you are," Rafe said softly. "The woman, not the weapon. The woman, not the weapon." For 15 years, Vesper had been defined by her utility, her obedience, her perfection as an instrument of violence. Now finally, she was defined by her choices, her feelings, her humanity. It was the most terrifying and liberating thing she'd ever experienced. As they pulled into the garage of their building, Vesper felt a wave of contentment, so profound it almost hurt. This was her life now. Not perfect, not empty, not controlled. Just real. And that was more than enough. Rafe opened her car door, offering his hand with exaggerated gallantry. "Mrs. Corvino." "Mr. Corvino," she replied, laughing as he pulled her into his arms. They rode the elevator up to the penthouse, wrapped around each other, kissing between floors, giddy with joy and love, and the overwhelming relief of having made it through everything to this moment. The penthouse was exactly as they'd left it, lights on timers creating warm ambiance, music playing softly, everything welcoming them home. Their home, built on their terms, filled with their choices, a sanctuary from the violence and darkness that still existed in their world but no longer defined it. Rafe carried her over the threshold despite her protests, both of them laughing, then set her down gently in the living room. "I have something for you," he said, moving to his desk and returning with a leather-bound book. Vesper took it, opening to find pages and pages of photographs, her journey over the past year documented in images, the first consultation for her business. The day she'd signed the lease on her office. Candid shots of her laughing, thinking, existing without performing. And throughout, pictures of them together, growing, building, becoming. "When did you?" "I've been documenting it since the beginning," Rafe admitted. "I wanted you to see what I see. The transformation, the healing, the beauty of you becoming yourself." Vesper's eyes burned with tears as she flipped through the pages. In the early photos, she looked guarded, uncertain, still wearing invisible armor. By the end, she looked open, joyful, free. "This is incredible," she whispered. "You're incredible," Rafe pulled her close. "And I wanted you to have proof, for the days when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if you've really changed. This is evidence. You're not who you were a year ago. You're not even who you were a month ago. You're constantly becoming, and it's beautiful to witness." Vesper kissed him, this man who saw her so clearly, who loved her so completely, who'd given her the space to become whoever she wanted to be. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for seeing me, for loving me, for being exactly who I needed when I needed it most," Rafe finished. "We saved each other, Vesper. That's what makes this work." They made love that night with a tenderness that still surprised Vesper. Even after a year together, she marveled at how gentle Rafe was with her, how he worshipped rather than took, how he made her feel cherished instead of used. This was what love looked like when it was real, uncomplicated by manipulation or strategy or performance. Just two people choosing each other, over and over again. Afterward, wrapped in Rafe's arms with the city lights glittering beyond the windows, Vesper felt at peace in a way she'd never thought possible. "I'm happy," she said, testing the words. "Really, genuinely happy." "Good," Rafe kissed her temple. "You deserve to be. After everything you've survived, everything you've overcome, you deserve every bit of happiness you can find." "We both do." "Yeah, we do." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, peaceful, home in every sense of the word. And in the morning, Vesper would wake up and continue building her life. Would take consultations from clients who needed her expertise. Would have lunch with Rafe and talk about nothing important. Would exist as herself, fully and completely, without apology or justification. She would be Vesper Corvino, not Mikhail's weapon, not anyone's tool. Just herself, complex, flawed, still learning, still growing, still becoming. The woman, not the weapon. Finally, forever, free. The end.